and NCWHS to get here to the final. Meanwhile, Lane Tech on the bottom half of the bracket, taking down the BHS varsity squad and AESHS, the Patriots, managing to get by some stiff competition and all the way into the grand final. So you have such a mix of emotions, right, coming into it. Obviously, you're excited and in many ways perhaps relieved that you've gotten this far, but there's still one step to go. You still need to go into the rift once more and try and take down that regional title.
Yeah, I mean, this is a best of 3, so each team will have 2 chances at victory. And so we're going to be able to see who can really come out ahead and who, you know, is going to be taking home that championship. Both teams, like we've said, have had such a journey to get to this point. And now that it's finally within their grasp, you know, just like every other varsity sport out there, it really comes down to the leadership on the teams and, you know, the veteran status. You know, whoever can hold it together a little bit better will eventually come out on top. And, you know, when these grand finals nerves, like this is the state championship, there are nerves involved. I don't care who you are and what you say, things are antsy. And so it's up to the leadership in the team, you know, the coaches, you know, the captains, to get everything together, make sure that everybody is feeling comfortable and make sure that everybody is prepared. They know their role and they know exactly what they need to get done for that W.
And it's such a different experience, right, playing for your school, because it's not just typical online matchmaking where you're playing with maybe people you know but you've never met, but these are your classmates. These are, you know, your coaches are also, in many cases, your teachers, or maybe perhaps coaches in other sports as well. There's a sense of community and togetherness and familiarity, right, that you can build into that you wouldn't normally have, I think, for most, you know, esports events.
Yeah, I mean, you see these people every single day, pretty much, it feels like. And so you know their personality. You know how they're going to react to certain situations. You can play off, you know, their expected reactions. And when you get the team environment cooperating along with that, it's so impactful, and it really puts the players in a good position to succeed.
Absolutely. It's so much more different than perhaps your typical solo queue experience where you're just diving in on your own. You know, you have this whole group in it, and I think it allows for a higher level of play too, right? You're raising the bar and you're raising the standard because it's now about the collective effort of everyone on the team. You can pool the collective school together and say, okay, we're going to play above what we can do individually.
Yeah, and, you know, PlayVS is giving us a position for this is really kind of huge in its own right. You know, you touched on earlier how you really wish this had been a thing when we were younger. And, you know, it may have been many moons ago, but it is nice to see that as things continue on, you know, more and more opportunities are evolving, you know, in this scene, really. You know, more kids are getting, you know, the possibility and the advantage to be able to take part in these leagues, not just with League of Legends, but we also have Rocket League, Fortnite. You know, there are multiple opportunities, and, you know, the players are really available to take advantage of these.
Yes, of course, it is such a great event, but let's break down, you know, we have some statistics here and there, you know, talking about each team. I want to talk about Lane Tech first. I have them pulled up here, you know, looking at, you know, some of the statistics that we see and where we're looking at. I'm looking at Enter, who's the jungler for Lane Tech, going through the statistical breakdown. That takedown average, 10 per game. That is absolutely wild. On average, going 7-2 and 8.
Yeah, very impactful to have a jungler that is able to have that much takedown participation, be so involved with the team. You know, a lot of times the meta can shift away from your jungler being a very heavy involvement. Right now we are not in that type of situation. Right now junglers are heavily relied upon to make things happen across the map. You know, we've seen previously this week that, you know, a single top laner was able to take away the game. That's not really standard. A lot of times you do need your jungler assistance, and so one of the bigger stats that, you know, is tracked professionally is jungle not priority presence. I can't think of the word now. Proximity, that's the word, jungle proximity. And so you're really keeping track of how close your jungle is to his laners. If he's, spending a lot of time in his portion of the map just farming, the monsters and just, doing his own thing, that's going to be a very low stat. And he doesn't have a lot of impact on the map. He doesn't have a lot of participation. But right now, that's the opposite of what you want in a jungler. So that's why we're seeing very active junglers. We're seeing a lot of Jarvan. We're seeing a lot of Graves and Rek'Sai once again, making sure that they can get into these lanes and really participate in the game and not just set themselves up on their own little island.
And of course, a lot of that is dictated as well by the changes to jungle XP as well. When you don't have typical farming junglers able to just sit and just clear camps and eventually just build themselves up to a point where they become monstrous, you're sort of forced to take that approach in a way where you have to jump into lanes and make things happen, because otherwise you're just going to fall behind.
Yeah, I mean, the whole season had changes like that for just about everybody. Camps being able to respawn a lot quicker means that counter jungling is a lot less incentivized. You going in and taking 2 or 3 camps doesn't hurt too much if the other jungler can get into a lane and get a takedown, because by the time they get the recall off, maybe spend some gold, get back into their side of the jungle, those camps are already going to be back up again. So right now your 2 options are hard farm, in which case you're really putting your laners on their own bias, like they have to now control the game themselves, or you can heavy gank, make sure you're in the lanes a lot, really helping out your players. And so there are options for both. You can pick like a Lee Sin and do this ladder, or you can pick like a Sejuani and maybe play a little bit of both. But you really want a high tempo, high pressure jungler and make sure that they're really involved with the team.
Absolutely. You want to do everything that you can to get your laners ahead. And speaking of getting your laners ahead, I want to jump, of course, across to the other side now. We're going to take a look at some of the statistics here from Wichita Southeast as I'm going through the table here. The player that jumps out to me is the player in the mid lane. You have Humph there. On average, 17-2 and 14, a 53% takedown participation rate. Absolutely unreal. Mid lane, of course, has always been an impact lane.
Yeah, I mean, you can really look at Western League of Legends, and the top players that are going to pop in your mind are probably mid laners. Like you have Perks, Caps, Bjergsen, all mid lane players. I don't care if they're playing in the bot lane right now on G2. They're still a mid lane player. And, this isn't any different. Humph also having one of the highest gold per minutes on his team. Actually, he has the highest 450 gold per minute, averaging over 300 CS, which is also pretty insane. If it's not a really long game time, that's pretty quick. Perfect CS is about 10 a minute. So I mean, being able to be that far ahead is pretty impactful.
And I love the choice of champion as well, as we can take a look and see the preferred champion. That Vel'Koz coming out in the mid lane, always an interesting one to deal with. Vel'Koz can sort of be played in a couple of different places, but definitely the strongest, I think, in mid lane.
So right now we are just waiting on some technical difficulties on the backside. We are waiting for these players to be fully ready before we head into this. Should be shortly, guys. Don't worry. We'll be bringing you all of the League of Legends action shortly.
Yes, as we don't typically have too much time here at the start, but I'll ask, looking at the rosters, looking at the statistics that we can see coming into it, who do you think has the best shot of taking down this regional title?
Just looking at the stats for now, I do kind of have to give it over to Wichita. Their numbers are a little bit higher when we're looking at KDAs and stuff. You touched on a couple, but I mean, it's really anyone's game. When you have two teams this close in the standings, it kind of can be a toss-up. The underdogs can always come out ahead. You never really have to worry about it, and it's really going to be who is playing better on their best day. This is a one-time thing. They have one best of three to take it. If they're playing off, they need to get it together. They have to put everything into this best of three to make sure that they come out ahead.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the greatness that both of these teams have displayed throughout the regular season. We're talking about the number 1 seed at 11-1, Wichita Southeast, going against Lane Tech, who is 10-2. So they're right there. They're right next to each other. There's not a clear gap between anyone. I agree. I think either of these teams can take it. It's going to depend on who can make the plays and who can make the right calls to see, how to get your team ahead in the best way.
And something to note is looking at, a lot of these players, these are on the side of Wichita, some older players. We have a lot of 11th and 12th graders. So these players have been here before. They've been playing the game for a little while. They might have a little bit more control on those jitters. Whereas when you look at, the Lane Tech squad, it's, they have some sophomores in there. They might not be as prepared for these, high stakes environments. So it's doubly important on those older players to really control the pace and control, the communications within the squad.
And it's one of those elements that we haven't really touched on, as well as, we're playing on broadcast as well, right? When you're playing from the comfort of your own home, you're just playing within the confines of what your teammates can see, right? Versus now, there is a broadcast, you're going to have your parents watching, you have your friends and family, your teachers, your community. You have all these outside eyes that you wouldn't normally have, and that adds an element of pressure. You want to succeed in that circumstance.
Yeah, I'm not sure if any of these players stream on their own time, so they could potentially be used to a broadcast style environment, but that still doesn't involve the stakes. This is for, the state championship title. Even if you're streaming and, playing to, 100 different viewers a day, that it's solo queue. It's whatever, you play and you win and you move on and you just learn from the experience. Right now, though, there is something waiting for you at the end of this long tunnel. You've put in all the work. It's all coming down to this. You really need to make sure that, you're actually on top of your game. And, as we, begin to start the draft phase, we're going to have to see how these teams as a whole have prepared. Have they gotten their picks and bans under control? Do they have, the early skirmishes under control? Are they going to be playing for, a composition, or are they going to be playing for safety? Do they have to worry about, any, potential surprises that the other team has cooked up?
Of course, and we talked about it earlier as well, how the meta is sort of wide open, right? We don't have any, active professional leagues going at the moment where, most of these spring splits have just concluded. So it's you can really have your choice, right, of how you want to go. Obviously, of course, there's a player base wide meta, right, where some things just work in solo queue, but in terms of actual 5v5 competitive, there's really no established meta for this patch yet. So all the options are on the table.
Yeah, if you want to look for a professional meta right now, you have nowhere else to look outside of, your other play versus events, or to some of the amateur leagues, or even to some of the collegiate leagues that are still going on right now. So you can either focus on those and do your research and see if and if there's any training partners in the area. These are high school kids, but they have friends. They could be playing, against some of their collegiate buddies, and taking insight and information from those, or they could just be like, we're just going to play what we're comfortable with. The meta suits all kinds. We just ban what we don't want to play against, and then from there we can go into what we want to work with, what we know works, and so they can focus on that side, or they can try and play to the quote-unquote meta that isn't potentially fully fleshed out right now.
And then The third choice as well is simply targeting the other team as well, right? You could simply, okay, we're going to go back, we're going to take a look at see what our opponents have done in previous matches and in previous sessions, and if we think there's a player who really excels on one champion, well, guess what's getting banned out first? It's going to be that preferred champion. So tons of different ways to go about it. All of the chess match that goes into the beginning of these series, I love to see it. I always find it enjoyable to see, the strategies that everyone takes.
Yeah, and historically in best of series, it's not necessarily a bad thing to, quote unquote throw the first game. Go all out game one, pick your cheese strat, pick, the champions that you have a low win percentage on, but you really believe in. That's when you go for like the Gragas Yasuo bottom lane. And, even if it doesn't work out, you're like, all right, we still have 2 games though, or we still have 3 games, depending on the series. Like, so you can do stuff like that game one, as long as you have, a rock solid, backup plan, so even if game one Yasuo Gragas doesn't work out, fall back, go on to, Yasuo Malphite, just make sure that everything works. And so we're going to be heading into the draft shortly to see exactly what, concoctions the teams have going for us today.
Yes, always exciting to watch. I love that the Yasuo bot lane meta has sort of, come back into resurgence here. It's always fun to see, and as we get into our first set of picks and bans here, we're going to see the first ban coming out from Wichita Southeast will be Zoe in the mid lane. Always a difficult champion to deal with.
Yeah, and I think that an early Zoe ban kind of leads into preference, right? Like, the enemy player can play that champion. It's not exactly a low skill champion. There is some nuance to it. So you ban that away. You don't want to deal with it. Everybody kind of memes the Sleepy Trouble bubble, but there's more to the champion than just pressing the E button. And it looks like Lane Tech are equally prepared going for a Darius Graves ban, really targeting that top half of the map.
Yes, we saw how effective that Darius can be in the set that we saw yesterday here on PlayVS, so no repeat performance there. And another interesting ban coming out from Wichita Southeast, eliminating the Yuumi, obviously a much preferred support champion than anything else.
Yeah, Yuumi really strong right now. In a world where Grievous Wounds is seemingly difficult to come by, these healer-style champions, Soraka, who was just recently buffed, Yuumi, who has just never been weak except for like 40 minutes into her release before anybody knew how to play her. You really need to play around these style of champions and make sure that, you don't have to deal with them. But Leona first pick coming out from Wichita Southeast, they are just instantly signaling that they just want to fight. They want to go in, they want to do damage, and they want to get out. They want to win the fight and win the fight hard. But Lane Tech picks potentially one of the better Leona counterparts of the Xayah their first round.
Yes, all of that strategy you can see going into it as we develop the picks across the board here. Interesting that they went Xayah and no Rakan there. It's going to be a Xayah Braum. I wonder if that's more comfort or if it's more style points. But then we see Wichita, of course, picking up what looks like the Jarvan in the jungle. So definitely going for that engaged potential, I would say, for Wichita Southeast.
Yeah, I mean, typically you do see the Xayah Rakan lovers duo when available. Rakan is the superior to the two if you can only have one. So in a situation like that where both are available, it does make sense to pick both. But it kind of works out, right? Because they pick the Braum, and then Wichita responds with Misfortune, who kind of self-counters herself in that situation due to the unbreakable will of Braum, being able to just completely deny that bullet time coming from the Misfortune. So it kind of works out by accident for them, but you definitely know that the coach is sitting on the other side shaking his head with a big grin on his face like, yes, right into my trap.
Yes, it certainly seems to have worked out that way, as now we have all the bans worked out across the board. Looks like an Aurelia ban coming out from Lane Tech. I wonder if that's more of a strategic ban, targeting a certain player, or if that's more a comfort ban. Don't want to go against it.
Fiora, another one of those really healing style champions that is super, super strong right now. Turns most top lane matchups into a skill matchup. And if you have a top lane carry player on the other side, definitely something to take out of their hands. Lane Tech, though, not perturbed. They're going to pick up the Jax instead. Another big top lane duelist who can get really big, really fast, and can either, team fight very effectively or devolve into this, split push style game plan that a lot of times there isn't an answer for. And, now that he's a mixed damage type champion, the Malphite pickup isn't really going to be able to sustain against him for too long.
Yes, it looks like we have something set up where there's going to be definitely a back and forth, where I don't see any clear advantage in this draft phase. I think both teams drafted very well. I think they drafted perhaps to their strengths. We talked about in the pre-show about the Wichita Southeast mid laner preferred champion Vel'Koz. Well, he went and got it, so it's available to him. He did take it.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the game plans that the two teams have right now, Wichita Southeast, very controlled. They know exactly what they want to do. They're going to press R and delete everybody. That disintegration ray comboed with everything else is just going to melt really anybody in their way. Even the Brahms Unbreakable can't break the dematerialization ray. And when you look at Lane Tech's squad, they have some strong picks. Syndra, very strong. Jax, very strong. Karthus Jungle, very strong. But it's less cohesive. Yes, they, have a lot of AoE and a lot of zone control, but there's no insta-like cue of just go. They don't have a go button like Wichita does.
Yes, and the one thing you love to see as well with Wichita is they have that go button, right, with that Malphite ultimate, and then it leads right into Vel'Koz and Miss Fortune, right, who can just sit back, and once that knock-up happens, okay, just hit R and go. That's a huge advantage in team fights. You get to dictate the pace. Yeah,
and pacing is really everything. If you can pace the game to your breakpoints and your cooldowns, then it almost is like easy mode. If every time the dragon's up, you have all of your ultimates and the other team doesn't, then it's your dragon. Like, there's no contest there, because you can't compete with 5 ultimate abilities when you only have 3. And so Wichita can potentially time everything together with those ultimates. We'll have to see what dragons spawn, because there are better dragons for them than not better dragons. Like Wichita Southeast would love to get like a triple Cloud Drake into Soul, just due to the ultimate cooldown reduction and being able to buff all of their cooldowns down to basically nothing. Whereas Lane Tech would love like a Mountain Soul or an Infernal Soul to either just blow people up or to just be able to survive that initial burst that Wichita is going to be bringing in.
Yeah, so exciting to see how this will play out here. Game number 1, we should be hopping into the Rift very shortly. Guys are going to be bringing that right to you in just a moment. And yeah, I think this is going to be a great game 1. I think it's going to set the tempo for the series, the tempo for the game. You have, at some point, there's only so much we can say. You just have to jump into it and say, okay, who can play better in game 1 and get that huge advantage of the best of 3.
Yeah, and, we've talked about the picks, but in reality, those are only vessels. The players are the ones that have to put in the work. The champions are just conduits, and, the buttons that are being pressed are the players themselves. And so, we've talked about the players, we've talked about the champions. All that's left is to talk about the game. As we are heading into it shortly, it's really going to speak to, like you said, the pressure, the tempo, the game 1, who can take the advantage and go to game point quicker. And it's going to be very interesting to see how these two teams collide on the Rift.
Yes, it absolutely will. This is the culmination of a whole season's worth of work, right? You have grinded it out to this point to get this far, and yeah, it's just you have the butterflies in your stomach. You're nervous, you're excited, you're ready to go. I'm excited here on the desk. I can't wait to see it. I can only imagine how the players are feeling.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about how they now have, eyes on the back. They have their players, their friends, their family, everybody tuning in right now to make sure that they are putting on the best show available to them. And, you know, having wrestled in high school, that's a big feeling. You know, this is, you know, a big thing to take home a state championship. You know, we spoke yesterday to one of the coaches, and the players there, their only request from their athletic director was to get varsity jackets. You know, being a part of the school spirit is so big. And, you know, being able to have that opportunity to represent your school ahead of everybody else, it's huge. It's absolutely massive, just like this invade's going to be.
Yes, as we can jump right into the rift and see Lane Tech hanging out in that bot side pixel brush, but nothing doing yet. I think they're going to back off of it, maybe not seeing the avenue that they would have liked early on here, but just testing the water, so to speak. As we take a quick break, we will be right back into that in just a moment. Just getting something resolved on the back end side. Unfortunate,
but we will be right back in as we see there. Not too long.
Oh, look at this aggressive play developing on the bot side here. You can see the Braum and the Misfortune just waiting in the bush. This could be disastrous early as we take a look over to that bot lane. Here we go. Zaya's just going to start putting those feathers out, and it's a big fight right away. There's already a couple of summoner spells burned, and the re-aggression comes back out from Wichita. They have to respond. And the first takedown is going to go the way of Wichita. It looks like the Jarvan will pick up one, and they may even pick up two. That Ignite will eventually do it. Misfortune gets the other. And what a massive turn of events so quickly early in this game.
Yeah, very early on, two takedowns in what was looking to be their advantage. You know, they got the multiple summoner spells, and then, you know, they could have backed off at that point. Unfortunately, the Jarvan was too quick to respond. And yeah, I mean, big tempo advantage for, you know, the Press R squad and their early game champions.
Yes, of course. And you love the idea from Lane Tech. You brought it up earlier in the broadcast. Game 1 is a spot where you wanted to try something courageous and adventurous like that, but it just did not work out for them. They couldn't quite get it to go all the way, and now they're behind in several different spots.
And it's kind of tough. You know, they do have a bit of a scaling factor on their side with the Xayah Braum. But Misfortune Leona is one of the single best early game compositions you can put together. And so giving them any type of advantage into the early side just makes them that much harder to deal with. You know, Misfortune having that double up Q ability that, you know, increases damage when it takes down a minion first can almost feel like you're playing a one-person game. You land a couple of those, your opponent gets chunked out, they now have to go back to base, and you just get to free farm all day long.
And, you know, to Lane Tech's credit, they did manage to pull out both summoners from Misfortune. There you can see both the flash and the heal on the cooldown, so it's not all hope is lost. You certainly can regress. She is somewhat limited, even if she is ahead for now. As we take a jump into the mid lane, that's going to be a flash away by the Vel'Koz. Hump wanting absolutely nothing to do with that one.
Very difficult lane there for the Vel'Koz early on. He will definitely outscale the Syndra just because of the true damage on his passive, but the Syndra has the early game advantage, being able to have that as basically targeted crowd control. You know, Scatter the Weak, very easy to land. No real concern there. Whereas Vel'Koz kind of has to work and, you know, play, you know, AP calculus to make sure that his abilities land.
I like that reference. That's very smart. It is a very big brain way to play, but for now, things are seemingly quieting down here. Neither team really pressing into too many more fights as we're just taking a quick look at the bottom lane here. Soldier, of course, trying to dictate a bit more of that tempo with the Xayah. And we talked about it a bit earlier. Xayah is one of those champions who may not be that strong early without her duo buddy Rakan, but once she gets going and she can ultimate out of fights and get some of that CC, and she can be very strong later.
Yeah, being able to have the untargetability on the ultimate as well can really open up some saving graces in certain positions, especially when you have a Malphite coming at you on the other side.
As we're taking trip across the rift, it looks like Malphite almost could have gotten away with taking down the Jaxer, but not quite. Nobody really wishing to overextend here too early. We saw how that can be disadvantageous if it does not go well.
Yeah, I mean, Jax Malphite is a top lane we used to see a lot back in the day. Jax been pretty good for a while now, but the Malphite's an interesting pick because typically they've seen it really when it's a full attack damage composition coming, against them, which isn't the case here. Lane Tech does have a lot of ability power damage in the Syndra and the Karthus. Armor doesn't work against that, and so Malphite is not going to be able to get the full usage out of his abilities due to not just full stacking armor. He'll be able to pick up like a Glacial Shroud into a Frozen Heart to try and win this lane. Oh no!
Ooh. And there you go. Well, just like that Malphite manages to turn it around. Seems like he caught level 6 right at the perfect time. Oh! Oh no!
Enter with the godlike R button. You just slowly walked up and pushed R.
Well, the Malphite may have thought he was okay.
Karthus for. Yeah, it is kind of unlucky that the passive shield didn't come up in time because it definitely would have saved him there. But the call there from Asilth, pretty good. You don't always get that call out from your laner, be like, he's low, he's really low, just press R. So it is nice to know that there is some communication there going on in the team.
Yes, and it does make it an even trade in the top lane, so nobody developing too much of an advantage there. As we're keeping it much slower pace. It was a very frenetic start, but I think there's been a little bit more respect given that first place order didn't work out. It's definitely drawn the pace of the game a bit more to the slower side.
And that really kind of favors the lane tech. They have a bunch of scaling on the team. Jax, Xayah, Karthus, almost seemingly infinite scaling. And so the solo game means they get more gold, they get more items, they get more experience, they just get further ahead as the game exists. And so one of the tools that they could have had to try and prevent that was this bottom lane. Timely and Drezzo getting that early game advantage, with that bungled invade. And seemingly since then, not being able to pressure it at all. Currently going down in CS about a wave. And Skeeblins gets another solo takedown against the Jax.
Yes, you saw the use of that press R and go button there for Malphite, just waiting that out. You can see how tanky that Malphite is. He just sort of just ate some of the damage, and then once Jax was on all of his cooldowns, okay, well here I go, and now your top laner is 2-1-0.
Yeah, and I mean, that just kind of goes to show the strength of Malphite right now. He's in a bad matchup. He's, kind of stomping it right now, going 2-1 so far with his only takedown, being because of the jungle assistance. And, it's good to see your top laner take some of the pressure off from, your lanes that might be having a bit of a rough time.
It certainly does help us. Oh, it looks like we're going to get a gank here in the bottom lane. That flash doesn't go anywhere. It's going to take a second attempt. Xayah pops her ultimate to try and get away, but Braum's taking too much damage. He cannot get out of it. Dresso will find that takedown. The assist, of course, coming out of the jungle, and that's the impact that you want to see out of your jungler.
Yeah, sometimes Darvin just gets to show up and press R. It always feels good when that gets to happen. And man, these mid laners are just showing off their giant brain, being able to dodge all of the Vel'Koz abilities, being able to land a couple of them. I wouldn't be surprised if these kids are in like some college prep classes. It's just absolutely absurd.
Yes, we saw again statistically how good Humph has been, but he's been very quiet so far against this Syndra. Of course, you can see the trade going down there. It's a very, very difficult matchup, and it's going to force a double recall there on the half of Wichita. They just simply don't have the HP to contest that.
Yeah, Karthus not that ahead just yet. Yes, he had that first takedown in the top side against Malphite, but only just recently having completed his jungle item. No additional ability power backing it up. Only has, I believe, 4 of his stacks on his... I can't remember. I just played it last night, and I can't remember the name of the class.
Unfortunately, I can't really help you out either.
Yeah, no, it's the Stalker passive. But it's not there yet. That's why the Vel'Koz was able to survive, but it is an infinitely scaling rune. Every time he connects with a champion who is low HP, he will get another stack, he will get more damage, he will get more, lethality, and he'll be able to eventually just kind of make these types of plays happen.
Yes, we can see some plays developing in the bottom lane here. Looks like it's going to be a second attempt at the Drake here for Wichita. They did manage to pick up the first one, and that will be very clearly theirs. They're going to take down that one as well. So, interesting objective lead here for Wichita. They have the advantage on the scoreboard as, well, it looks like we got another engagement going on here. That Syndra simply will have to flash away. Braun going to come back in and just make sure that she doesn't get cleaned up. And Leona have to flash out as well, my goodness. Summoner's burning left, right, and center. And the aggression still comes out. Syndra will pick up the Leona. And my goodness, that was a bit drawn out there in the river. They knew the presence was there because of the completion of the Drake.
Maybe you see another gank attempt in the top side.
Well, that Jack's just forced to go away, but it's a huge ultimate from Malphite. Oh, press R and go indeed as he manages to knock both players up. He will pick up one, flashes back in, and takes down both.
Eventually gets shut down himself, but that is bad news bears if you are lane tech right now.
That is an absolutely incredible turnaround there from Skiblins. Just, I love the patience and understanding of being able to back off of the initial gank attempt, and when he saw both players are leaving, it's just, you simply jump right in and go. You love to see that aggression, and it is a perfect 2-for-1 trade. It's about as much as you can ask for in that spot.
I mean, there was nothing else for him to do except for survive. He really checked every single box on the what you want top lane to happen, pretty much. And, being this Malphite, this literal rock in the top lane, is going to be able to eventually start making his way down into these team fights.
As we see another kerfuffle breaking out on the bottom lane here, it looks like Jarvan's going to hop in on the party as well. Dresso finding the last touch on that pick. Will get credit for it. Zaya forced to just stay back under her own tower, and she continues to battle it up, but there's so much pressure here. She's going with those feather daggers, trying to CS and stay alive, but it's been a bit of the story in the bot lane here where, unfortunately, once that Jarvan comes back in, the engagement is so strong here on the part of Wichita. Just, there's not much lane tech can seemingly do to get out of the way of it.
Yeah, and it was really smart gank there, knowing that the summoner spells were still down from the last time he had visited, so that he knew that there was no real danger of them getting away. Once he gets that flag and drag combo into the Cataclysm, it's just donezo. He's able to pick up the assist for his team, and they walk away with a little bit more pressure. They do decide to back. We are going to be seeing some more money coming out in favor of them.
I think Wichita's in a very stable position here. They're going to capture this Rift Herald, and seemingly uncontested. I'm not sure that lane tech will be able to get there in time to really do much about this, and it's been a pretty solid game for Wichita. I have to say they pick up their objectives. They got great outplays where they wanted it, and it looks like they might go here again, trying to catch out this Jax. A South had pushed up perhaps a little bit too high. Leona's going to go in, but Jax wisely turns it back under his own tower, but will now be subject to the Rift Herald dashing his head in against that top lane tower.
Yeah, really smart. Oh no. Oh, was it enough?
Oh, it just is Syndra going huge there in the mid lane, taking down Hum's Vel'Koz, and we even get another engagement here topside. Misfortune will ultimately burn her ultimate, and Jax barely survives. He's going to be chased into the jungle. He dashes away, and it's no good. Malphite ultimately closing that down. It has been all Wichita in that top lane. We didn't even really get a chance to go over that fight in the middle. We just saw the complete re-aggression, but that's such a huge use of the Ripto.
You saw the Carthage come out towards the end of that mid lane fight, which would have secured the takedown onto Vel'Koz, but Carvindle did a lot of work, and I'm gonna call it a kill steal against his jungler, who maybe could have used the golds a bit more, but these things happen. And then the top lane is actually almost really unfortunate there for Wichita. Leona really wanted to give the takedown on Jax over to someone else on her team, and it almost caused them to lose the takedown in its entirety. But they are going to be taking out the third dragon, which does set up Soul Point for them.
It certainly would, but Lane Tech knows they're going to go back in, and it's huge from them. Teamfight's going left, right, and center. In fact, Lane Tech steals the dragon as well. They're going to pick up 1, 2. Let's see if Leona can get more. Zaya gets a shutdown on a third. A 3 for 2 in the end, and still under pressure is Wichita. That is an incredible play from Lane Tech to deny that dragon.
Yeah, I mean, great steal there. We saw the smite come out from Luke, leaving the dragon at 70 HP. I think it was 74 to be exact. And then Enter is able to just walk up and take it away from him. They end up winning the team fight on lane side as well. Multiple takedowns going over to the Zaya. You know, that big power carry that they're really going to be relying on pretty soon. But just so much big crowd control coming out of the Lane Tech squad. We saw the huge 3-man stun from Carvindle into the secondary stun there from Acelth. And what are you going to do when you're stunned? You're just going to eventually lose the fight.
And it was so critical. It felt as though Wichita really was having objective priority really throughout this entire game. Lane Tech needed one, and they had the perfect chance there. They had, you know, pretty much their entire team set up to contest that trick. It was just beautifully executed by them to jump in at the right time. And now this is a much more even game than we had.
Yeah, I mean, they're able to pick up the first dragon. Oh no.
Oh my, this yank in the mid lane is going to go perfectly for Jarvan. Syndra used her flash, tried to get away, but it will not be enough. And now it's Wichita just pushing it right down that middle lane.
Yeah, I mean, really unfortunate to get caught out like that. The Dragon Spear just barely enough to get the takedown. They're going to be able to push it for the first tower there as well. It's only their third tower of the game, actually. And, you know, now, even 5 kills, 2 towers ahead, you know, they're still only even on gold. They're actually behind about 200.
And that's the crazy part, right? Is even though Wichita has had the advantage, seemingly, you know, through the takedowns and through the objectives, they really are neck and neck in terms of gold. So this game can really still go either way. It's going to come down to the plays that each player can make and the calls that are going to go out team-wide.
Yeah, I mean, there is always the volatility of this Wichita squad, just being able to press R and delete everything in front of them. But they do need a little bit of setup beforehand, and you know, that dragon fight, unfortunately, they just didn't have it. You know, they ended up not being able to be in the best position for the dragon fight, and they ended up losing because of it. As we look forward, you know, we're gonna have another dragon in about a minute and a half, Baron spawning in 4 seconds. It is going to be, you know, objective central very soon.
Yes, it will. As we can see, of course, the resets and the recalls coming out. Everybody knowing that these objectives are coming back, wanting to make sure they are fully geared up and ready to go because the fights are coming. We can see already. Vision being established. Really, what's nice about the vision I like from Wichita here is they have almost the entire river covered, both bot and top side, so they're going to be able to get their eye out and see where Lane Tech is trying to make the play.
Right now, we can just see the vision control beginning for Wichita around that dragon. You know, they do know it's up in about a minute, and that it could be, oh no, disaster.
Just about disaster, as Cinder will go gold, but it will not be enough. Leona picks up another. Misfortune will fall, so it is an even trade, but now it's a 4v4 across the rift. Neither team really establishing too much presence. It looks like Wichita is going to try and rotate topside. Braum will successfully go away, and the correct call going back down to the dragon.
Yeah, it doesn't actually spawn for 30 seconds, so they are just picking it to try and keep vision control. Really great trade in the middle lane. It is good news for Wichita that Misfortune can essentially win that fight even after getting stunned. But typically, Cinder shouldn't be in that type of position. And right now, with the dragon spawning in, you know, roughly 5 seconds, we're kind of seeing some sneak pushes coming out from Wichita.
Oh, and here we go. Big fight happening in the bottom jungle here. Sai will pick up the first pick of the team fight. It looks like Wichita is starting to back off a bit now, but can they get away? Jax looking to get some damage done onto the Leona. He will, and it will just about be the takedown. Cinder takes it in the end. Now Lane Tech starts the dragon. Do they have the damage to go all the way? No contest there from the bullet time for Misfortune. Lane Tech does pick up their second Drake.
Very, very strong showing there from Lane Tech. They had a player get caught out. Karthus was just not where he was supposed to be. He did not, you know, believe in the buddy system as you should at this stage of the game. He was going warding by himself, but that Zonias gave his team just enough time to get involved. Jax being able to flank effectively onto, you know, the carries and kind of split up the fight, and then, you know, being able to take down the Jarvan almost instantly because he also lost track of the buddy system, diving into the Xayah. And then once the, you know, the jungler and the support are down, the only one left to really do anything is Skiblins on the Malphite. And, you know, 1v5, even as, you know, the 5-3 and 2 Malphite, it's not really believable.
No, it's not, and it would have to be almost a perfect situation for the Malphite to land the ultimate and try and knock everyone up. You'd have to have everyone grouped together, and Lane Tech is going to be aware of that problem, right? They know how dangerous that Malphite can be in those team fights, so they have to stay somewhat spread out to avoid, you know, a huge knockup attempt.
Yeah, and I mean, what they've been doing has been pretty effective at avoiding that Malphite. You know, catching out other members of the squad, waiting for them to make the mistakes. You know, yes, it still puts, you know, agency onto Wichita to be able to roam around the map and make just less mistakes. But as long as they're going to continue making the mistakes, Lane Tech is absolutely going to be taking advantage of them.
As we can see, both teams now still trying to establish a dominant position over the objectives here. Baron's still up, so that is, of course, where we're going to try and get some advantages. Cinder will take a stab at that Malphite, but not looking to continue that. I don't think that's an advantageous place for her to be.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about the Malphite being such an armor-heavy champion and how he probably wouldn't be able to just all in on that stat. He's trying to prove me wrong. He has the Sunfare Cape, the S1 Gauntlet, the Bramble Vest backing up, only on the Merc Treads for magic resist, and even with Carvindo landing 2 to 3 abilities there on the top side with the GLP, he did almost no damage. And had he continued the trade, Carvindo probably actually would have lost the 1v1 to the Malphite.
It would have been interesting to see, but regardless, nobody's trying to get caught out this late in the game. Of course, those respawn timers only ever going up, and objective priority ever more important here. So if you're going to go in and lose your life, it better be for a worthy cause, and I'm not sure 1v1 in the top lane is just what they're looking for yet. So
Yeah,
still a
I
bit
mean,
passive here.
we talked about the dragons earlier and what souls would really, benefit the squads. And, Lane Tech got really one of the better souls. I thought the Earth Soul would be absolutely the best. As we see a big engage here, not quite enough damage, though.
Almost for the Syndra. It was a very smart use of the flash there by Vel'Koz, looking to get away from that one. It will probably end up saving him, but of course that is a summoner down. Oh, but re-aggression here coming out from Jarvan onto Syndra. A follow-up from Leona, who goes gold right away. We have 2 players in the gold, and ultimately Misfortune picks up the shutdown. We'll see if Xayah and Braum have anything more to follow up here, but that is a clean pick for Wichita. Can they capitalize now across the map?
Right now, they should just be running down to the bottom, trying to get vision control of this Infernal Drake. Either way, it's soul point for whichever team gets it. 4 Infernal Souls, though, is absolutely bonkers, and it is the only option left for Lane Tech to be able to get that, Dragon Soul. And, when they are such a damage-focused squad with Jax, Karthus, Syndra, it would be just abysmal for Wichita if they were able to secure it.
It is certainly seeming and feeling as though that the next big fight will be over this Infernal Soul. As we can see here again, most of the players situated on the bottom side of the map.
Yeah, and I mean, the Dragon's spawning now, and Carvino's on the top side, and you can see it getting pinged out by Wichita. They know that, he's not going to be able to respond, and they're just going to go ahead and take the Dragon free of charge.
And just like that, I predicted a bit more of a team fight, but it will be Wichita. They will just step right up and take it. As you mentioned, they saw that, they saw an enemy player in that top lane and said, at worst it's 5v4, we're going to try it. And, well, free of charge, as you mentioned. That's about as easy as you can get at this point of the game.
Yeah, and giving them soul point means that Lane Tech 100% has to fight for the next Dragon. Giving Infernal Soul to Vel'Koz Misfortune is a loss. There is no other way to describe the damage output the champions at that point will able to do. And think about every single Vel'Koz Q landing and doing an AoE burst explosion worth of damage. That is so incredibly difficult to deal with.
It certainly would be, should it happen. And we talk about the pace of this game as well. I do really think that this is playing into Lane Tech's hands. You can see again on the scoreboard across the top, pretty much even on gold objectives and takedowns, nearly identical as well. So the longer I think this plays out, the more of an advantage I think Lane Tech can build if they hold out long enough in this game.
Yeah, I mean, we can look at the gold and, this late in the game, it can be tough to really quantify what a lead here would mean. But, I mean, just look at these 2 mid laners. 3,000 gold apart. This Syndra having, 8 takedown participation to the Vel'Koz's 2. And, being 70 CS ahead, you can see why they're trying to get the Vel'Koz into these side lanes to let him just farm up and try and just make up as much time as possible before these big team fights break out. But the Syndra trying to match it, but with neither tower in the top side tier 1 available, both of these, mid laners are very vulnerable. And so far, we've already seen that taken advantage of by Wichita when they were able to gank the Syndra.
You do have to rely heavily on the buddy system at this point. You never want to get caught out alone. Everybody, of course, you can see the items on the bottom of the screen. Pretty much everybody at or working on a 3rd item. So damage output very high for both teams. It's just going to really come down to, I think, at the end, who can team fight this or establish control of objectives, right? It's just going to be, a farm fest for a minute, but once those objectives pop up and really when that dragon comes back in about 2 minutes or so, okay, well, we have to contest, we have to fight it, here we go.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me that neither team is remotely concerned for the Baron. Both teams seem to be hyper focusing onto the Dragon Soul, which when it's an Infernal Soul makes sense, especially when it is now Soul Point. But there's been 5 minutes since the last dragon went down, and neither team even really put vision around the Baron. Like, we see a control ward in there now from Lane Tech, but that was really the only vision we've seen attempted over there. And for now, Wichita once again clearing out the dragon pit of wards, trying to get some deeper vision in there. And it is 100% up to Lane Tech right now to try and be involved in this dragon fight. And you can see that they're trying to get as much gold as possible onto this Jax, who is just really struggling in the Malphite matchup.
Yes, it is a challenging aspect. The other part of it as well is trying to establish the priority in both the middle and the bot lane, right? You can see that blue wave already crashing, towards very deep into the middle there. As you can see, bit of poke here coming out. Lane Tech understanding that Wichita's positioning for this Drake. Still 60 seconds until it comes in, though.
Yeah, and now imagine every single one of those poke abilities with a damage explosion attached. You can see why Lane Tech just simply can't give it up. But, I mean, look at this Malphite. Just absolutely absurdly ahead right now, it seems. And Jax, even with that, Blade of the Ruin King, is really struggling to keep sustained against just the constant, unrelenting poke from the Malphite.
And here we go. Malphite just going to come in and try and bully Jax as best he can. He will get nearly a half bar of health, call it more. That last little poke there from the Q, but that's going to be... Every bit of health matters at this point. When you're trying to get this engagement here, you can see Wichita just trying to deny entry to the river whatsoever. They don't want Lane Tech anywhere near this Drake.
Teleport coming in from the Jax.
Oh, and here we go. It's a huge team fight. Jax just staying alive. Full time for Misfortune to take down one. Leona ultimately picks it up. Nelcos finds another. As here we go. The big team fight comes out, and Malphite is just too big. MF gets a shutdown on Desire, but it's not enough there. Lane Tech will be denied here. Braum simply running from the Jarvan. They will ultimately call that off. The Drake will go the way of Wichita after a tremendously well-executed team fight from them.
Yeah, and what we saw there was just the ease of execution and the compositions. They're going to secure the Infernal Soul, which is so huge for their squad, and you can already see them transitioning up to the Baron as well. They have, 10 seconds before anybody even spawns, and then another 15 seconds before they can even make it to the Baron pit. So, really, really big tempo swing coming in here, and it was just really tough to see that fight. Jax teleporting in a weird flanking position, and then the team fight was able to be completely split up there by the Leona, engaging upon, the side that they could already see. And once they were able to secure the Jax away from the rest of the team, they take him down very effectively and very quickly. And then, Hump on the Vel'Koz is able to just sit back, fling out that disintegration ray and just melt through the rest of the team. And, Enter on the Karthus tried to do as much damage as possible, especially with the Requiem there at the end. But unfortunately, everybody else was already down, only Garfield surviving. And it was a really tough team fight for Lane Tech there.
It certainly was, and I want to credit Wichita here as well. They saw that teleport coming in from the Jax, and they immediately collapsed upon it. Once they sought it out, they said, okay, we're going to remove the Jax from the equation and just go from there, and it certainly worked out for them.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because Jax right now can't be the engager. So like that teleport there, if you have like a Scion or a Malphite or an Ornn, like that teleport can make more sense. He's isolated from the team. He would have had a lot of survivability. He wouldn't have had to worry about, getting exploded very early on. But when you're at Jax that's 0-5, you have Blade of the Ruin King, Black Cleaver, not very tanky, not a lot of stats, not a lot of survivability. You need somebody else to be the go button that we've talked about. And, Lane Tech doesn't really have one. Braum's the closest thing with the Glacial Fissure that they have. The Winter's Bite's pretty good too. But relying on skill shots and, ultimate abilities to be your engage R button not super stellar, and you can see why the more effective Leona Malphite combo with the Jarvan assisting is just so much better at the press R go mentality.
And you can see that sort of mentality taking over here in the bot lane. Jax simply cannot contest that turret. It will fall as the press continues here. That Baron buff's still up for Wichita, so they're going to try and maximize the advantage where they can. They will just push those lanes in as far in as they will go, trying to knock down this middle turret here. They won't quite get it yet, but you have to imagine the next push will.
And you can see how much damage this Vel'Koz is putting out. You know, we talked about how little interaction he had with the team earlier on in the game, but we saw one Q there land on a soldier and it half helped him. So really, really tough to try and push out these waves. You know, Baron buff is going to be ending soon, but there's still time on it. They're still going to be getting objectives out of it, and, you know, they get that first inhibitor turret. Malphite's knocking on the bottom one as well. They're really going to try and push through to get the inhibitor here, and Drezzo is going to get that destruction. And with Malphite already having a wave prepped in the bottom, it's hard to see them not getting a second one.
And you can just see that wave crashing in, but Wichita, they will seemingly back off of this. They're not trying to push that all the way in. They're trying to play it as smart as they can. I think they realize how close this game is still. Yes, they have the advantage, but they don't want to waste it away, right? And with that Baron buff just about gone here, they're going to recall and reset and look for the next avenue to try and push that in.
Yeah, I mean, they have the advantage. No reason to risk it. Play the slow, methodical, you know, Eastern style of play. They want to make sure that they dot the T's, cross the I's, and just take everything they can out of this. And so now, you know, the middle inhibitor's down. We should expect a potential 4-1 again. You know, Malphite has teleport available. You can send him to the top side. You know, he doesn't need to be with the team just yet, whereas the rest of the team can, you know, hang out in the mid lane, push the bottom lane a little bit. More so in the bottom lane, you know, maybe get some vision control around the Dragon Pit. Elder Drake is in 1 minute and 20 seconds, you know, giving that full team-wide execute. Oh no.
This is a problematic position for Jax here as Leona will engage along with Jarvan. They're going to knock him down as much as he can, but Jax staying alive, almost gets away. It will be Drezzo finding the takedown in the end on that misfortune. It will be the pick for Wichita. You can see Malphite here just applying pressure now both sides of the map. We have a 4-1 split push going on. Can they gain entry into the base?
I mean, really big crit onto the Jax there from Misfortune, comboed with that Infernal Soul Explosion. You can see why Jax would need a bit more armor. You know, maybe a Randuin's, but a huge stun coming out there.
Xayah managed to get that huge combo going in. Brom's almost down. They're not going to go in. It's a 3-man knockup. Oh, the double kill comes out for Misfortune. And it will be an ace for Wichita. They're in the base. They found the avenue that they needed. The Xayah combo was not enough to stave it off for Lane Tech. Wichita, Southeast, your winners in game number 1.
Very nice, methodical play coming out there from Wichita. You know, even against the scaling composition of Lane Tech, you know, they seemed like they had everything under control basically the whole time. You know, that Malphite was just so big. You know, a literal mountain coming at you. And, you know, the Jax unfortunately wasn't able to contain it. And once it bled into other portions of the map, Wichita was just really able to capitalize on the advantages they had gained and really put the pressure to Lane Tech. And, you know, seemingly Lane Tech was able to claw back a little bit. It looked like they were going to be on pace to get the Dragon Soul with 4 Infernals. Unfortunately, though, after that second one that they got, the game plan seemed to crumble a little bit. And we saw the completion of the Soul there from Wichita, run it right into the Baron, and then once again back to that slow, methodical, you know, game plan to close it out.
Yes, I really love what Wichita did at the end there. They didn't just immediately try to push everything that they had to try to close out the game. They knew that they had the objective advantage. They were able to just slowly push it down. And we talked about the Malphite as well. So big for that split push, right? you saw the amount of pressure they put in both in the bot lane and in the top lane, where he was just taking down turrets individually, just completely shutting down the Jacks as well, and it just boxed Lane Tech back into their own base, and they can only go back so far.
Yeah, but, so that does set up a potential set point going into the next game. Wichita being up 1-0 in this series. We're going to see how they come back from this short break that we're going to be heading into now with a renewed game plan in the favor of Lane Tech. What changes they decide to make and what, transitions they make in the draft phase.
Absolutely, guys. We will see Game 2 coming up next. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break, allow everyone to reset, and get ready for game number 2. We'll be right back here on PlayVS.
I think a lot of students have just gotten another sense of how to belong and how to create relationships outside of what were the traditional avenues.
And a lot of my students talk about how they feel safe in the esports program, and that's their family, that's their community. And I think that esports gives kids a future that they might otherwise not have.
Man, I wish that had been available when I was in high school.
One of the greatest things is getting an email about how excited a parent is that their student is involved and is having a great time and wants to talk about their esports experience. I've always been a gamer. I usually wanted to play the single-player role-playing games and the WoW and StarCraft. I didn't really know a lot about esports. I didn't realize the extent of how large it was. Our athletic director walked into my office. He's like, just watch this video. It was a promo reel that said, esports is coming or something, games to be announced, and it was this hype video. And I was like, we have to do this. He's like, I don't have a coach. I was like, oh, when do we start? How do we do this? I would say that I'm actually stepping into the students' field. This was especially the case in season 0 and 1 with the seniors who had been playing for years. I was there to coach in the sense of be an organizer, be an encourager, be there to try and instill the elements of sportsmanship and athletic conduct. But I know and recognize that some of these players know more about these sports than I do. And I can let them be teachers as well to the new kids. And so having that relationship, that partnership with those students has been really important. It's been really exciting to be on the beginning of this program to say, let's see what happens and see where it goes and learn along the way and have an outlet for students who have many, many different interests, but maybe this one aspect of what they love doing hasn't really been given an outlet yet. And to say, we know you love all these other sports, but you're also really talented at this, or you want to be talented at this, and you can. And there's an avenue for that. The reception from parents has been fun in its own right. Parents say esports, like, what is this, video gaming? And the answer is, yeah, it is. That's the entry point. But I'd love for you to come to practice or check out some of these videos and these stats and let me show you the difference that we're trying to create here. When a parent comes and sees a game, specifically like League of Legends, from start to finish and goes, I had no idea that that's the level of intensity and the level of dedication that it takes to play one game and the endurance that it takes to do this and to communicate as a team. Like, I had no idea. Seeing that reception and that flip is really exciting, because then they're all in. It's been interesting to see the elements of other traditional sports. Communication skills, sportsmanship, conduct, planning, strategy, skill, and mental athleticism. All of these things feed into creating an esports program and creating students into athletes. It's just been really fun to watch them progress really, really fast by having that team dynamic to fall upon.
Pump up some bass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Central Region Grand Finals for League of Legends presented by PlayVS. In case you managed to forget between Game 1 and 2, I'm Perino. I'm joined once again on the desk by Doctor, and we just witnessed an incredibly close game number 1.
Yeah, I mean, very close. Both teams going back and forth. Early game featuring Wichita, mid game featuring Lane Tech, end game featuring Wichita. Very back and forth. Almost not what we expected after that early, engagement bungaloo that happened. But the teams recovered. They both went about playing their game plans, and both teams were relatively effective at what they wanted to do, and we're going to have to see as we head into the next draft if they continue with similar game plans or if they decide to opt into new strategies.
I feel like that's one of the most difficult things about a close victory or a close loss is that it's difficult to sit there and say, okay, well, we can do the same thing and go again. Do you need to change it up? Do you need to change it up by how much? If you completely lose the game, then okay, fine, scrap it and go next. But when it's that tight, it's just the minor adjustments that are going to make a huge impact.
And realistically, both teams could run back their entire squads. And one of the only changes two changes that I think would need to happen is get a different top laner for Lane Tech. Don't give the Jacks over, give them a more safer pick, you know, like an Ornn or a Maokai, something we haven't seen yet. And then swap up the jungler. The Karthus worked to a point, but I think having more agency would have suited them better. You know, you had the Syndra, who was so far ahead, really bullying the Vel'Koz. And then the Jarvan was able to kind of just focus on other lanes, kind of sacrifice Vel'Koz in a way, and they were able to keep ganking the bottom lane, keep getting, you know, that lane ahead, because, you know, mid lane sacrificed Vel'Koz. Top lane, Malphite was winning by himself, which really left only one lane for the Jarvan to have to focus on. Whereas if we had another, you know, ganking style jungler instead of the Karthus, they could have gone top to help Jax, and lane tech might have been able to force more responses out of the Jarvan other than just ultimates up, run bottom.
And to your point about making that jungle switch, we do have word that there may be a substitution going on for lane tech here, and I believe it is in the jungle. I think Cages might be stepping in. So to your point, while that may influence that decision, right, to change champions, you have a different player coming in, different style, you know, different champion pool perhaps. So you can make that change now if you're lane tech with a new player coming in. Maybe that's the difference maker for them here in game 2.
Yeah, I mean, and there is precedent for player changes to institute champion changes. You know, famously, SKT1, you know, did it with Faker and EasyHoon. You know, being able to swap in EasyHoon to play that Azir, even though Faker was obviously stiller at the champion, you know, they just did him for everything else. And then they're like, you know what, Azir fits into our next game plan, swap EasyHoon in. He's going to get the playtime. He is just godlike at this champion, and you're going to be able to make it work. So maybe that's the game plan here is, you know, the Karthus pick was what they wanted from Enter, and so now they swap him out for the next player and for the next game plan, you know, and so now you have a new player coming in. There might not be as much knowledge coming in from Wichita on that new player, and so they might be able to reevaluate and, you know, be caught off guard by either a champion pick, a, you know, a jungle pathing decision, just something that might not be expected.
Of course, you have to expect the unexpected here in the grand finals, right? There's nothing left to lose, so to speak. It's all or nothing at this point. So any sort of, you know, change in the game plan, any sort of curveball that you can throw out there can certainly be to your advantage. I'm so excited to see the changes that we get to see here in draft and as we go into this game, because again, this was so close. I can't say enough. This was such a close game 1. It's going to just be minor changes, and it's going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, I mean, coming into draft with lane tech already down 0-1, I think the absolute best, most perfect draft they could hope for, and granted, they could potentially go completely different from what I think is the best draft, but I think it would be like Ornn top, Jarvan jungle, Syndra mid, and then, you know, if they get the Xayah Rakan option again, definitely grab that. Xayah worked, Braum worked in some situations. You know, they were able to turn a couple fights because of the Braum passive, but Rakan just synergizes so much better. And that is like a tier 0 draft right there. You have the tanky sustain in the top side with the Ornn, the early game pressure from the Jarvan, the Syndra, who just kind of stomped the lane freely. You know, didn't really have any contest there except for once the level 6 came out from Jarvan. But you know, we'll have to see. And then, like I said, the Xayah worked and the support worked. So you don't really have to worry about too much down there. You just have to make sure they don't get ganked.
Yes, that will be the difficult part, as I believe our draft is ready. We'll be transitioning over to that in just a moment. And to your point about the Rakan as well, one of the things that we discussed was having that engage potential for lane tech, right? Who's going to jump in first? Well, if you have a Rakan on the team, all of a sudden, now you have that engage potential, that press R and go, if you will. So that would certainly add that element as we jump into our pick ban phase here, where we're going to see the first ban from lane tech is going to be Darius.
Yeah, I mean, looks like we're keeping very similar game plans going away. Darius, Zoe being banned away. I wouldn't be surprised if Graves is the next one again. Echo was also banned away last game. So just keeping with the game plan here, ban-wise, you know, those are two very, you know, feast champions. We saw yesterday how once the Darius gets ahead, they kind of run away with the game. Echo is kind of similar in a different fashion. You know, he is an assassin, so he really does just tons and tons of damage. Can really delete your carries, whether you have like a mid lane or attack damage carry, or even if you go for like a bruiser style top, you know, that Echo can really kind of pop them. But interestingly here, Lane Tech bans away the Jarvan. Very curious to see the thought process behind that.
Yes, and I wonder if it's just because of a tactical standpoint, or if they just simply want to put their jungler on ease. Maybe they know something about Wichita's jungler that, okay, he's not as strong if he's not playing Jarvan. I'm not sure, but we see Wichita answer with the Fiora ban, looks like, in the top lane. So interesting stuff all around as we get now our first set of picks coming in. And this is shaping up to be an interesting one already.
Yeah, I mean, the Graves was banned away last game, so Wichita being able to pick that up just because they can. Very quick jungle clear, very ease of access into the lanes, is able to get some cheeky early objectives because of that True Grit passive. He's also just tons of damage. Like, he's going to build a lot of lethality and just kind of try and pop, the squishies on the other team, and he's very doable doing that, especially once you combo it with a Leona, following it up with a Jhin too. Just so much attack damage coming out of Wichita Southeast right now, and a lot of it being pretty bursty, right? Like, you don't get a lot of time trying to survive when you have a Graves Jhin just smacking away at you.
Yes, it could be very difficult. And also, I really like the Zach pick here from Lane Tech. We talked about, increasing their engagement potential. Well, Zach has obviously a ton of mobility. He can really surprise you coming out, jumping into these lanes. So, provided he's in the jungle, which I think he should be, I really like that pick there from Lane Tech. Should provide a different angle of attack.
So, when you think Zach, you do think of a jungler, like you said. He has, however, been seeing most of his more recent play in the top side, being able to get that lane farm, make sure he's that much tankier. Scaling up in levels is kind of nice. He is a little bit quicker to the draw when it comes to objectives because of being that accelerated level. But the biggest factor there is that gold advantage from the jungle. And so we're, like you said, based on the next pick, we'll see if he goes in the jungle, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is in that top side. Ezreal, Ornn are the rounding picks here, with Misfortune and Janna being the picks before that. It makes me think it's an Ezreal mid lane with Grasp, potentially. You and I were actually joking about it before the broadcast today, about how it was kind of a cheese pick, but there is some validity to it. And with Syndra and Malphite rounding out the Wichita comp, this is Hump's, better champion picks coming out, and then why not take the Malphite again? It worked.
Yes, the Malphite was absolutely instrumental in Wichita's Game 1 victory, so we'll see if he could have a similar impact in Game 2 here, but I like that Lane Tech also went to the Ornn. We talk about that huge ultimate, right? Being able to bounce that ultimate back into a team fight, having that engage. Well, it seems that Lane Tech has gone that direction for game number 2 here. I think that could be huge. Ezreal mid is an interesting one, especially in answer to a Syndra. How do you manage, to stay ranged and stay mobile against a Syndra? That's an interesting one, too. We'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it's kind of rough. Early game, obviously, Ezreal not very active. He does need time to scale, especially depending on which build path we see from him. If you forego the tier, then you can kind of rush into Trinity Force and spike a little bit quicker, but you lose a lot of late game style damage due to not having that mirror mana. But you do get, like I said, that faster spike. We'll have to see if he decides to go that. He's going to be getting a lot of gold in the mid lane. He will have that opportunity, but he's more than likely going to be going that mirror mana style build into the Trinity Force as expected, so that he still has, somewhat of a mid game spike, and then still, relatively useful in the late game. I'm curious to see his runes, though. We talked about the Grasp. It is something that we've seen before, but it's kind of a toss-up. We see Ezreal's take Lethal Tempo. We see him take Conqueror, Grasp as well, since there is no Klepto anymore. So we are going to be hopping into the game to find out exactly what Keystone he took. Mid lane, it's Conqueror. All right, I'll take that.
Yes, we were intrigued to see if we got that second showing of the Graspy Undying Ezreal, but a Conqueror is, of course, always a great keystone to take. As we can see, pretty much a default setup here for both sides. No early invades, seemingly, yet. That could change, of course.
Yeah, we'll have to see if the bottom lane from Wichita try to do the same cheese play that they took advantage of earlier. I don't expect them to, since Jin level 1 is probably taking dancing grenade, so that he can farm a little bit faster. But you never know. But it does look like the teams are just going to be setting up standard jungle paths.
So we can see both junglers starting on that bottom side of the map, which is fairly standard, getting Alicia as well from both bot lanes, so nothing too crazy. You can see that little cheeky ward here from Wichita into that jungler, so they may have an idea of Zach's pathing if he's not, of course, just jumping across his camps, but a little bit of vision advantage there.
Yeah, and so they will potentially get a track on the enemy jungler if he does decide to go that way. Zach, though, is going to be going for a full clear. Hopping down to the Krugs, he'll take that, go up to Wraiths, Wolves, Blue Buff, Gromp, probably in that order. I don't know if he's going to gank the top lane. He probably should, but for now, Ornn is going to have the pushing advantage. So by the time Zach finally makes his way up there, it may not be an option. But Ornn, Zach, Ezreal, Misfortune, Janna for the lane tech squad means they're pretty lacking on damage at a certain point. Ezreal and Misfortune being the two main damage dealers for the squad, we're going to see how they stack up against Jhin, Syndra, Graves. And, having a whole less person doesn't exactly stack in their favor.
It does not, but you can see Ezreal did manage to land one of his Qs around the center. Good poke from him. He'll look to fend off that wave close to his towers. We're not getting any early action here. Only 3 minutes in, so plenty of time for things to develop as we see the Graves here manages to come in and steal the buff from Zach, and he's just going to press the advantage. He's double buffed there in the jungle. It's going to get the rotation out from Ezreal and Syndra, I believe, following as well. Here we go. Zach jumps back in on it. A flash away for Graves. Is it enough? Barely. Ezreal has to dash away. And another flash coming out from Ornn. This engagement all the way followed in from the top side. Right as I said, it was quiet.
And you can see the advantage that the Graves can take. Being that much faster on the clear, you can look at his jungle camps. He went blue buff, Gromp, red buff, invade. And he's able to get 3 buffs out of it, whereas Zach is now that much further behind in experience, is going to be that much further behind once it comes to his camps, because now Graves has the timer. He can do this time and time again as long as his lanes have the priority, and as long as Syndra exists, she's going to have lane priority over Ezreal.
Yes, she certainly will, as we can see there. Big chunk of damage coming out from Syndra onto the Ezreal, and we dip over into this bot lane now. They're trying to punish the Graves, but he'll just be able to walk away from that one. Now the full rotation from the bot lane here. Looks like we're going to get a huge fight going on. Janna knocks up Leona, but she will pay the price for it. That'll be the first takedown going to the way of Jhin. And there's nothing left for Misfortune other than to flash over the Dragon Pit there. Had to get away from that one. But first pick going the way of Wichita.
Yeah, I mean, so much more early opportunity with the picks selected. Syndra, is an AP mage. They have, different spikes than these marksmen that we're seeing come out of lane tech. Unfortunately, that does mean that advantage for the early game is once again going Wichita's way. And we're going to have to see if they can control the mid game, this time better than they did last time. And, I mean, so far, this Graves is so active, already showing up in the mid lane as well. This man is a monster.
Yes, he is simply on a mission to carry Wichita to that grand final victory here. We talked about it so much at the top of the show. You need that active participation from your jungler, right? Well, one great way to do it is to just push the other jungler off his own camp, steal his buffs, and then just bully the laners. It's just a great effective tactic, and it's helping Wichita early here.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the stall tactic eventually will fall in lane tech's favor, but man, they really need to survive. They have a lot of work to do to get there.
They certainly do, but it was only the one pick in that bottom river fight that came out, so we're looking across the board here. Nothing too crazy. Wichita is ahead, and they're obviously applying tons of pressure really across. You can see that top and bottom lane, but they're not so far ahead that Lane Tech can't just stall out and make plays. As we can see here, the call going out, looking to take that first Drake. Wichita having, of course, the priority in the bot lane. They'll rotate up. Let's see if we can get a contest here.
They make the good decision to pull out the Dragon. The ward is being canceled out by the control ward, so they don't really have vision on Lane Tech's side. But they will be losing the Earth's Dragon early on with the Ocean Dragon following it up, which means we're going to be getting either another Infernal Soul or a Cloud Soul.
Yes, and we saw how damaging that Infernal Soul was when Wichita was able to secure it in the previous game. It obviously adds that extra layer of damage, and when you have champions like Misfortune, like Graves, Syndra, you can just absolutely go haywire with it. So it's a nice little objective there for Wichita, but as we said, still plenty of time, very close, can still go either way.
And we do see the Ezreal pick up the tier of the Goddess. Pretty much the standardized build you're going to be getting out of an Ezreal. It's not very often you'll see them forego that. It does give them more mana, obviously, so that they can spam those abilities, they can spam those spells, and try and, you know, stack it as quickly as possible to make it to that Mira mana, which will then increase their auto attack damage per, you know, a percentage of their mana, which also applies to his Mystic Shot. Combo that with the Sheen from the Trinity Force, and you do a ton of damage.
And doing a ton of damage is always a good strategy. Never going to complain with that. As they're trying to push Graves off of that Scuttle Crab there. He's trying to poke down. We can see a little bit of skirmishes going on here as Graves just going to walk through the jungle, and Zach will jump right out of the bush. We'll catch him out with it perhaps. Ezra's going to follow it up. Graves trying to flash away, trying to dash. He is double buffed, and he just does not think Ezra doesn't actually get up as the Orno comes through again. And Lane Tech, if they can finish off the Syndra, Ezreal manages to take it. It is double kill as they switch right back into the bottom lane as well, also doing their own thing there. That is a huge play for Lane Tech. They do get the clean 2-0.
Huge advantage there gained by the Ezreal, picking up those 2 takedowns. You know, the Graves just wrong place, wrong time. You know, was expecting the Zac to already be on the buff, but he was just hanging out in that back pixel bush. He's able to get the Elastic Slingshot onto the Graves, start the fight on his terms, and had the quicker backup in form of the Ezreal before Syndra was even able to get involved. And, you know, being able to get that snipe out there with the True Shot Barrage, pretty impactful. Does give buffs over to Ezreal, you know, does secure that first takedown, and then from there it was just kind of easy picking on the Syndra, who did not have any cooldowns remaining.
Another thing I want to point out in that as well was there was such a beautiful rotation by a Self there on Ornn, coming right down, you know, had just picked up level 6, brings that ultimate back in and just absolutely catches out Syndra there. So credit him on that. It's a beautiful assist as well from the top lane.
Yeah, you don't always see those types of rotations, but this type of top lane, you know, the Malphite, Ornn top lane, lots of wave clear on both sides, especially now that Bomb and Cinder have been completed by both laners. So it's very easy for them to shove the lane and make rotations. Last game, Skeeblins was able to, you know, not shove the lane as hard, so which is why he was ganked so often, and being able to turn that around into, you know, the advantages that he gained. But now Ornn waves clear much better than Jack's early game, and so we can see, you know, Asif able to make transitions out of it, you know, roam around the map, be involved with his team, you know, be more than just a power vacuum.
Yes, it will take those kinds of impact plays if you want to secure victory here. So we're getting another skirmisher in the top side. Skeeblin's pushing that Malphite as far as he can, but ultimately Asif will back off.
Ornn, not really. You know, the most abusable top laner. But Skeeblins is, you know, kind of playing off of the fear from the first game. You know, when this Malphite was able to get those solo kills, I don't think there is nearly as much danger as that happening this game, but it's still in the player's mind, right? Like, you know that if that Malphite gets ahead, you know exactly what happens.
Yes, and everything that happens is nothing good for lane tech, but they're in a pretty good spot right now. Of course, having that Ezreal ahead 2-0-0, we touched on it a bit there. Very nice, as he will use his teleport to get right back into lane, catch that wave. Wichita, however, is rotating once again for that Drake. You can see both Syndra and Graves coming into that bot side jungle here. We may see some action coming in now. Graves will go in, but he's knocked up by that Janna Q. We'll just stay away from it. Oh, and the re-aggression from Zach will catch one, maybe catch two. Syndra is now all alone 1v4. Her team will try and come in and rescue her. Do they do enough damage? Yes. Ultimately, Soldier on Misfortune earns the takedown there. That is a 2-0 play again for lane tech. And now it looks like they'll have priority on objective as well.
Yeah, Carvindle, being pretty aggressive there, burning the flash on top of everything else, but securing himself the third takedown of his game. And this Ezreal is just going to continue to keep getting bigger. And, you know, you can see the damage that this double marksman brings to the table. Both teams do have that available with the Graves and the Jhin, and then both the, you know, the Ezreal and the Misfortune. So I mean, the damage is high on both squads, but you know, the counter re-engage from Cages there was so huge and instrumental in that fight. You know, Syndra was able to get caught out because of it. They were able to get the takedown onto the Graves and then transition that into the objective securement. And having an Ocean Drake for Ornn is absurd. You get 2.5% HP regen out of combat. Ornn loves HP regen because he hates going back to base. That's why they gave him his own shop.
Yes, that is absolutely instrumental for him. And it should help him out immensely in that top lane there. If we take a peek at the mid lane with now, of course, the 3-0-2 Ezreal. You thought the 2-0 Ezreal was scary. Well, he managed to make that aggressive play and earn himself another takedown. So
Carvindle doesn't have. The one thing he doesn't have at any stage of the game, though, is wave clear. And that's why you can see them just pop the Herald mid lane, because what is Ezreal going to do about it? Nothing.
When he's played in the bot lane, he has that mobility and has that dash ability to perhaps at least allow his support to help him with that wave clear, but in this case, none whatsoever in the mid lane, as it will require help from his Zac to ultimately deal with some of those problems in that mid lane. But perfectly level on CS, pretty much across the board here. The goal difference is only 200 across both teams, so yes, lane tech, and this is the same thing we saw last game too. Yes, lane tech, they're ahead on takedowns, but it's still very, very even.
Misfortune's been doing tons of work in the bottom lane with that double up as well, making sure the Leona is constantly below, you know, 75% HP, which does make it so much more difficult to really push the engage button. You know, when you're starting a fight half HP down versus a team that, you know, has some pseudo sustain with that Janna shield, you know, it's tough. But we do see Graves hanging out in the bottom side, just completely pinged out though.
Yes, he has certainly been called out there by lane tech. They will not be stepping forward into it. You can see those question marks dancing around on the minimap there.
He's still there,
they found
though.
him once again. It's going to earn the flash out of Janna. She has to go away. As that, oh, it will be Graves ultimately taking it down, but Misfortune pops her bullet time instead. Now the re-engage coming down from the Cages. On to Zac. Can he pick up Graves here? He has him cornered in that bottom alcove. They're going to collapse on it. He'll pick up one, and he nearly finds another. Leona ultimately goes down to MF. And Soldier with the triple, all three falling for Wichita. Huge play coming out there for Lane Tech, and Soldier cleaning it up.
Another just massive swing in favor of Lane Tech right now. You know, they're able to continuously push the advantages that they've gained so far. You know, the misfortune already being 1-0-1 with the triple Doran's Blade there. Now able to go back and complete their first item in that Essence Reaver. You know, only had the BF portion of it before, but hey, you can just, you know, do these types of things when you get triple takedowns. Like, what else are you going to do?
Not much. You're already 4-0-1, 16 minutes into the game at 130 CS. That's about where you want to be, I would say, as an 80 carry.
It's tough to get better starts. And so, you know, we can already see the itemization coming out from both of them. You know, we are just going to see tons of attack damage flat on the Misfortune. You know, not the quickest attacker, but you know, when you build Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge, Storm Razor all on a row, you don't really need to attack a lot because every single one's going to hit like a truck. And the Ezreal going for the Iceborne Gauntlet, actually, instead of the Trinity Force, going to be that, you know, continual source of, you know, soft CC with the slow, with, you know, the, you know, cooldown reduction to be able to keep spamming those Mystic shots.
Yeah, so you can see Lane Tech have gone out and they've executed their plan well here in Game 2. But how does Wichita answer? Obviously, you still have some considerable advantages, right, if you're Wichita. I think most players are down on their KDA, but when they group together, we've seen how well this Wichita team works together when they're working as a group. I think once they get to a point in the game where they're grouping often, we're going to see Lane Tech, of course, take this Drake here. But once they group together, I think they can really get themselves back into this game.
Yeah, I mean, right now, once again, the weak point seems to be this top side for Lane Tech. You know, they do have the better pick this game, but, you know, you can see here, Skiblins is still forcing them out away from the waves. You know, we're seeing a 20 CS advantage coming in favor of Skiblins. I would really love to see, actually, Aself pick up, like, triple Rejuve bead. You know, it's only about 450 gold worth of investment, but it does give you just so much health regeneration that, yes, he's being poked out, but all he has to do is just exist. Take those triple Rejuve beads, stay, you know, fully stocked on health, and never let this Malphite just control the wave like this. You know, keep it at least middle of the wave. That way you don't have to worry about a TP flank from Malphite, because you can always keep eyes on him. Always make sure you know where he is and be able to interrupt his teleport if it were to be, you know, called out. But at any point, you can join the team fight of your own. You never have to worry about being like, oh, I can't TP down to a fight because I'm only about 25% HP. With these triple Rejuve beads, he would just constantly be ahead.
Well, it looks like if Malphite wasn't applying enough pressure on his own, certainly having your Graves there to just step in and push him back all the way into the base is going to force the recall here for Ornn. Certainly adds a ton of pressure into that top lane.
Yep, but I mean, he's Ornn this time, so he doesn't have to worry about dying. He has enough mobility and enough soft CC that he can just get away.
And sometimes living to see another day is the best option you can take. Skiblins, of course, though, will try and knock down this tower. We'll see if Aself can get up there and contest it enough. He may just keep that tower alive, but not quite.
So another first brick going over to Wichita. You know, being able to stay even on gold despite, you know, this takedown difference, but, you know, the amount of gold and where it is definitely not equal.
Right, you can see, you know, as we look across the way here, just how, you know, powerful this Lane Tech squad is. Oh, we might get a move here in the bottom lane. It seems the rotations are coming that way. Leona might find Zach in the bush, and that could be advantageous. Oh, she walks right by.
She didn't check it. Zach, what are you doing?
Here we go. Oh, and it's Malphite is all coming back into the bottom lane. Jetta will work that Q. The bullet time from Misfortune isn't quite enough, but Ornn is there instead. We have a full-out fight here. Cages will take down Skiblins. It is ultimately a 2-for-1 for Lane Tech. A bit of chaos in the bot lane.
Zach having the submarine style play there, getting the drop onto the Jhin and forcing both summoners early before Ornn was able to come in and do the cleanup duty. You know, able to get 2 more takedowns for the Lane Tech squad. You know, very impactful, very meaningful as we head into, you know, the next objective take. You know, as we can see the gold here on the screen, pretty much everybody's close, but the carries are definitely ahead in favor of Lane Tech, and so they are going to be having, you know, the item advantage heading into the next dragon fight in about a minute. You know, TP was blown by Acelt though, not Skiblins though. So Skiblins, as we can see on the map, he is heading back towards that top side. Doesn't have to worry about being exactly with his team right now, whereas the Ornn has to be a bit more mindful. You can see the Ezreal going up to the top tier 1, getting a little bit more farm just to make sure that he's in a good spot, has the TP available for the dragon as well. So really, really smart macro decisions here coming in from Lane Tech.
Yes, you can see the rotations, of course, across the entire rift here. We have the bot lane now in the middle, the top of the bot, the middle going up top, so all sorts of rotations in play here, but we'll see how that works out as Malphite will take a look at this Ezreal at the top lane, see what he wants to do about it. Ultimately, you have to change your plan of attack, right? Going against an Ezreal, it's a bit more of a challenging target with the mobility as opposed to the Ornn.
And he's surprisingly tanky with these Merc treads, you know, Iceborne Gauntlet type build. He's got a bit more armor than you expect. He does have the magic resist. Big engage in the middle lane though.
Yes, as Zach, we see him jumping over the wall, will pull.
Oh no!
Leona back in, but the bullet time is canceled for Misfortune. That certainly would have done it in that instance. The double up! Soldier will pick it up regardless though on Syndra. Leona ultimately getting away. As now that Ornn ultimate will just go straight down to the bottom river. Immediately Lane Tech are switching it down here. As Jhin is just going to get caught out, there's no chance for him here. Soldier actually ends up picking that up. I was surprised to see him get that, but wow, huge, huge plays for Lane Tech.
Yeah, Drezos with the questionable pathing there, heading right into the main CC of Lane Tech. And another Cloud Drake going over to Lane Tech as well, really, really accentuating their press R composition. You know, each of these Cloud Dragons is going to give them a bonus 10% reduction on their cooldown for their ultimate only. And so, you know, with impactful ultimates like the Ornn, like the Misfortune, like the Ezreal, having any type of additional cooldown on those is huge.
Yes, it certainly is, and it is, of course, to the advantage, right, of securing those objectives. It's why they're prioritized so heavily. As you can see the players sort of developing in the top side. Corvindo's going to come up with Ezreal, try and chase down this Malphite, as once again they go in, but Malphite using his ultimate wisely to get away from that. Smart play by him avoids a 2v1 situation.
Yeah, I mean, the Unstoppable Force there does have a lower cooldown than the Flash, so it is a bit safer to use, and this is not good for Lane Tech. This is scary.
This is not a wise decision to face check that bush there, but ultimately, Ornn gets away, and the follow-up actually by Lane Tech is pretty solid. It'll push them out. I think they were perhaps looking for the Ezreal there. Is a little bit more squishy than Ornn. And
that's top tier, top laner privilege. Walking into 4 members of the enemy team and walking out with 60% of your HP. That is just silly, especially when he only has 2 items.
Yes, that is certainly an advantage here for Lane Tech. They're not really punished for that face check into that bush. I think it was a solid setup by Wichita, but ultimately, as you mentioned, when you have that much HP and that much tankiness, well, even 3v1, just step right back out and not an issue whatsoever.
Really good map knowledge coming out from Lane Tech this game, making sure to stretch the opposing laners wide, being able to take all of the tier 1 towers 25 minutes into the game, does open up the map and does give them more opportunity to put some deep wards in as they look to secure, the Cloud Soul once again.
And for all of the action that we saw now, it's going to be a little bit more quiet, I think, as we transition more heavily into this mid-game here. It's already 25 minutes in. This is something we didn't really talk about last game either. That game nearly went 40 minutes as well. This is not really what the meta has been, right? These games across League of Legends in its entirety have normally been very quick, but you can tell how evenly matched these teams are. Nobody's ending these games early. We see here, looks like a little bit of a skirmish there, trying to establish some vision near the Baron. Janna using her Q to get up on Graves there, but it'll just be enough to push him away. She certainly does not want to take that fight 1v1.
But Graves now hitting a point in the game where he starts to fall off a little bit, especially heading into the Zac Ornn combo. Graves' auto attacks only hit the first closest target. And if the two closest targets are just these massive, massive tanks, you're really not going to be doing a whole lot, unlike the Ezreal, who is just chunking the opposing laners.
Yes, that's, of course, the advantage of when you have a high damage champion like Ezreal, who not always played in the mid lane, is obviously more common in the bot lane, but when you get him going, when you get him ahead, he's 312, 250 CS, well, it becomes a massive problem when you pair him up with the rest of his team. So Lane Tech going to be trying to establish their lead here. We can see this next Drake 50 seconds, of course, the positioning working towards that bot side.
Yeah, I mean, you can already see the upgraded Ornn items coming out as well. The Sunfire Cape for himself, the Blade of the Ruin King for Ezreal. Not going that Trinity Force build means she can, look into other items. And, right now, Skeeblins, you see him eventually lose the trade here, but is still not ready to commit to trying to fight that yet.
Not quite yet, as you can see, just a bit of a slap fest going on, if you will, in the bottom lane here, but this next big fight will be around Baron. Wichita, they could see Lane Tech had tried to start it, but Lane Tech will back off of it now. They got a little bit caught out, perhaps, so not willing to take that fight for the Baron yet, but they have to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, this is Cloud Soul. This is going to be the Cloud Soul, so not only does it give you that third 10% cooldown reduction, but you do get an increase in movement speed once you cast your ultimate. So for players like Ezreal and Zac and Ornn, huge. Less so for the Janna and the Misfortune, who have to stay immobile during the cast of their ultimate.
Yes, and you saw a huge play there actually for Lane Tech. They started the Baron, right, and then rotated all the way down to the Dragon. Is Zac's going to jump in and try and catch some of these players out? You can hear the flashes being heard left, right, and center. Cage is going to go in and try and get one. Timely's very, very low and stuck in the bush, and ultimately will go down to Soldier. It is a pure one pick there. Ultimately, Wichita decides to get away from that. But Lane Tech, they are cruising now. They picked up the Dragon. They're working on Baron. And they are looking now to try and end this game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, really smart engage there. Using those two big tanky front lines available to them. This is a very interesting position they find themselves in. But, man, I don't think it's such a good idea to be going for the Baron when the only one down is the enemy support.
It can be a problem, but you can see Carvindle is just going to try and put out as much damage as he can on the Skibids there on that Malphite. And Janna will actually pick up two with her Q. She's just zoning them off as much as she can, but the re-aggression comes back in from Skiblins. Cinder's going to pick up the shutdown on the Misfortune, but the double kill from Ornn. Massive, massive plays here. It is ultimately, at the end of the day, 3 for 2 in favor of Lane Tech. But I think Wichita, I think they did enough to shut down that Baron take.
Yeah, I mean, really what we saw there was Lane Tech overstaying their welcome. It was really only a matter of time before some sort of hard CC landed onto the carries of Lane Tech, which is exactly what we saw happen. The deadly flourish coming out from Jin, locking down Carvindle, and then Skeeblins just went in. He just pressed that R button, got the takedown, because it landed under both Carvindle and Soldier. And at that point, it was really only luck that left it for Orange to be able to get a double kill on top of it.
Yes, and the problem for Lane Tech as well is once you lose both the Misfortune and the Ezreal, that is so much, I mean, pretty much all of the damage really in your team fight. So once those two players go down, it's pretty much impossible to stick around either for a Baron take or for an extended team fight. So once that happened, they had to get away.
And, you know, it's tough because both these teams really want to go in. Both of them want to be all-in style team fight masterminds. And the Ezreal is doing his darndest to try and prevent that. We saw how much damage he was able to put onto Humph Syndra with that WQ combo. And if he's just allowed to free reign do that, then, you know, these team fights don't really exist. And look at this. He's not even landing abilities, and he's going to get the kill here. Carvindle going down to... or Drezzo going down to Carvindo, excuse me. And then he's able to get away. There's no concern in the world. That is an aggressive play from Soldier. He is not going to survive, but holy moly.
Yes, you can see Lane Tech. I think they really are trying to force the issue now. They're just going for individual plays and 1v1s. You saw the unbridled aggression coming out from them. I think what they're trying to do here is they're just trying to work themselves towards the end of the game, but this could be a problem here. They need to knock down this turret. Ultimately, Skeeblins and Timely will back away from it. They just don't have the damage output between the two to defend that last mid turret.
And now this Ezreal needs an answer, and there just hasn't been one yet. He's gonna get the tower, actually. Really surprising there. I thought the minions were cleared fast enough. But if you don't answer the Ezreal, which nobody can in a straight up 1v1, they're just everybody getting annihilated by him and the poke that he can produce. But if you can't take him out, then these team fight, you know, options kind of start dwindling for Wichita. You know, they don't have the health to be that all-in composition. We've seen it a couple times now where Carvindle's been able to get, you know, Timely below half HP, at which point it's not very wise to go in at that point.
And these are all of the tactical decisions you have to make in the middle of this game here as these games continue to go on and on. The interesting part I think is that nobody's really made a huge move for Baron yet. Nobody's been able to secure it. But it's really prevented that push, right? If you look at the, you know, the wave state across all three lanes, it's pretty much even for the most part. Obviously, the tower advantage going the way of Lane Tech, but they haven't really been able to make a concerted push into the base just yet.
And that's kind of a problem because there is a lot of wave clear in the form of Graves and Syndra. Jin's not amazing at wave clear. He does have some tools, but it can be a struggle if he's forced to do solely that before he's able to get too many items. And so the Baron would be hugely impactful in trying to get into the enemy base. And with, you know, the Elder Dragon spawning in about 15 seconds, that seems to be what's in mind for Lane Tech. If they can secure that, then, you know, the Baron fight becomes kind of a breeze because they now have that additional execute in their favor. So, I mean, really, you can end the game at that point, too.
And you can see the priority Lane Tech are giving towards moving towards that Elder Drake as Carvinda will use that teleport to work into the bottom side here. But Wichita, they know what's happening. They know they have to go in. And here we go. The knockoff from Janna will catch Malphite out, but he does not stick around for it. Lane Tech trying to finish off that Drake, trying to do everything they can to get that Elder. Oh, Luke's going to go in for the hero play, was going to be denied by Zach. He's just simply zoned off of it. And Orin El's coming out now. And still the dragon hasn't fallen. Soldier will pick up the takedown onto Skeeblins. And still, they're trying to do everything they can, but it won't be enough. Misfortune going huge with the double, and Carvindle might even find another one. You can see that Elder Drake popping off. And Lane Tech
it gives you that
got what they wanted.
Yeah, and that should be game as well, actually. You know, they do have these two beefy tanks. All of their marksmen are still alive. Everybody's down for at minimum 20 seconds. They have minions and tanks. They're going to be able to push on through for the W. And man, that was crazy.
Wichita knew they absolutely had to come out and contest that Elder Drake. It gives off that executioner ability, as you mentioned. And my goodness, it did not go out for them. I have to give Wichita credit. They did everything they could to stay alive and try and steal that Elder. But it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, I mean, the Elder was so meaningful to the fight there, you know, giving them that additional execute power. And you saw what the Israel was able to do. He landed one Mystic shot, one auto attack onto the Syndra, took her down, and then was able to hop mid and even through the Jin's heel, able to take him out as well. And with the two main damage dealers of Wichita then down, you could see that that was game. They were able to then push on through to the inhibitor, take that out, go on to the Nexus, and it really didn't even matter that the Baron was never taken that game. They didn't need it. They got the 4 dragons and the soul.
Sometimes that's just all you need, that execution ability. When the game goes that long and you have these big tanky champions, it can be so dramatic to the impact. As we get our end of game screen here, you can see obviously Soldier coming out with a huge performance on Misfortune, 10-2-7. That's pretty good impact for an AD carry.
Yeah, I mean, being able to get that early triple takedown was just so massive for not only the champion itself, but you have to imagine the morale of the team as well. And looking at the graphs here, you can already see how much damage that Misfortune was able to do. You know, the Ezreal, no slouch either. Carvindle continuing that supreme display of talent that we've seen from him so far today. You know, he's been so impactful both game 1 and game 2. I have to imagine that as we head into the third ban phase, they try and put some priority onto trying to get rid of him a little bit, but they did that this game by taking the Syndra, and he was like, all right, that's fine, I got Ezreal. So I mean, going into game 3 now, what do you do? Because you've seen now 2 different champions from him that he's excelled on.
Yes, it's just such an impact play from Carvindle, and credit to the Lane Tech squad as a whole. They really rallied together, and they took that game 2 right to Wichita Southeast. You know, I thought maybe Wichita were going to be able to, you know, build the momentum they built in game 1 and just push it over the line here in game 2. But we have a series now. It will be going to the game 3. You'd love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that the players were ready to play today. They're showing up and proving it. They're taking it all the way to the limit. This is a best of 3. Both teams now on match point. Whoever wins the next game takes the series. They take the crown. They take everything. And this is literally the most stressful position to be in at this bracket stage. They've no mistakes left, no opportunities to lose out on now. Every single step from here on out is meaningful. Every pick, every champion, every ability cast is make or break.
Well, we will have to see what happens in that game number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be taking a short break as we get both teams a chance to recollect and get ready to go for this game 3. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back here on PlayVS.
I think a lot of students have just gotten another sense of how to belong and how to create relationships outside of what were the traditional avenues.
And a lot of my students talk about how they feel safe in the esports program, and that's their family, that's their community. And I think that esports gives kids a future that they might otherwise not have.
Man, I wish that had been available when I was in high school.
There is a stereotype for women in video games. A lot of people tend to think that we're not very good. Sometimes the male players get a little snarky, and sometimes I do have to put them in their place. 1v1 me, bro. Come at me. I was bullied relentlessly in school. So video games became my escape. And eventually I started entering tournaments and making a name for myself. A lot of people thought it was a joke, but I was really excited. I went before our Board of Education and presented the case for esports. We talked about the benefits of playing video games. You build teamwork, critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, communication. These are skills that companies are now looking for. And also, I brought up the child that won $3 million in Fortnite and discussed how students had a future with esports if they could win money and go to college on scholarships. We made an announcement 2 days after the board approved, and I had about 450 students show up, and it was a little overwhelming to think about how am I going to teach students how to play this very complex game. There are a lot of different types of students in my program, and I have a lot of students who say, they come to school for esports. They know that they need to do well in class. Otherwise, their teacher will call me and I will come up to their classroom and sit in that class and make sure that they're doing what they need to do. A lot of them are now maybe at B's when earlier they were C's or D's. I had a student graduate last year. He told me that he was going to drop out, that he didn't like school wasn't for him, and then we announced esports, and that's kind of what saved him, and he graduated and now he's in college. That meant a lot to me. I tear up a little bit every time I think about that child. Every school really does need an esports program, simply because, in my personal experience, a lot of these kids that play esports, for various reasons, they can't play a physical sport. But esports is it's online, it's at the school, it gives students a place where they can feel safe and they belong. Because back in the day when esports and video games weren't mainstream, you were bullied relentlessly for it. And a lot of my students talk about how they feel safe in the esports program, and that's their family, that's their community. Being an esports coach means to me that I have a huge responsibility to these 65 children that are in this program. Despite the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing half the time, they are counting on me to give them guidance in this game so they can win and go to playoffs. It's more than just being a coach, it's being there for students who might not have anybody who's normally there for them. It's about encouraging them, loving them, and showing them that you can do something like this and be good at it and go off and have a future.
Open your eyes, what can you see around? Wind of the open sky, over the siren sound. This is a dream, getting the royal scar, holding a diamond blade, throwing it far. Holding your breath still, you join the fire. We'll just sit and wait till you see me fly. You know they'll never catch me for it. See me fly, the way I put my finger on it. See me fly, you got it, then try to tell me you got the wrong guy. See me fly, you know they'll never catch me for it. See me fly, the way I put my finger on it. See me fly, you got it, then try to tell me you got the wrong guy. Look at them now, all of the noise they make, counting the cards to one. Queen of hearts never breaks. Falling asleep, here might just take a while. Try not to grind your teeth, dreaming to touch my style. Well, can't say I blame you. Try to come close to, but all you can do. See me fly, you know they'll never catch me for it. See me fly, the way I put my finger on it. See me fly, you got it, then try to tell me you got the wrong guy. See me fly, you know they'll never catch me for it. See me fly, the way I put my finger on it. See me fly, you got it, then try to tell me you got the wrong guy. Got the wrong.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Central Region League of Legends Grand Final. Guys, we've been waiting patiently for this to happen. We have a Game 3, winner take all between these two schools. Doctor, we've been in for a tremendous series so far. What do we even have for Game 3? We've seen it all pretty much to this point.
I mean, this is when the players really need to dig deep, get into those reserve tanks that they have, and pull out really all the stops. You know, as I was saying before the break, this is really it. There's no more room for mistakes. Everything they do here matters. And so, once again, when I talked at the way beginning of the broadcast, seemingly so long ago, about how the senior portions of these teams and the coaches, and then, you know, even the literal seniors really need to step up. They really need to calm everyone's nerves and make sure that everyone stays on the same page.
Because, as you mentioned, these have been very long games, right? These have gone basically 40 minutes in both games 1 and 2. And we're in for the marathon here. The big thing is making sure that you're still fresh, you're still ready to go, you're still ready to play at a high level, because this has been a long series. And if history is to repeat itself for a third time, another long game in Game 3.
Yeah, and, you know, we don't really touch on the mental fatigue aspect a lot. You know, when you look at, you know, long, you know, football matches, hockey matches, things like that, obviously physical fatigue is a very big factor. But there is a world where even in those sports, the mental fatigue kicks in. You know, your mind is always in this high gear, go, go, go mode, and your body is releasing, you know, the correct, you know, chemicals to respond to that fact. And so, you know, even when, you know, you're in a League of Legends game, when it's high stress, when it's high impact, you know, those chemicals are still being released, and you still, you know, have potential to burn out within a series, you know, and they don't even, you know, really have that much to go back to. So it is, you know, once again, dealing with that fatigue, dealing with that, you know, lack of focus, and trying to funnel it back into, you know, what is potentially the last hour that you'll get to play.
Yes, we have been live in real time here for 2.5 hours. That is longer than any basketball game, any baseball game. Well, actually, no, baseball can probably run that long. I shouldn't say baseball, but it's a long time to be sitting and ready to go at a high level. As guys, we're going to hop into the draft here. We're not going to sit back and wait anymore. Looks like these guys are all set and ready to go. We'll see for the third time here, what are the strats? You know, do you continue with what you've been doing, or try and change it up once more?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how Game 1 is when you want to burn all of those cheese strats that, you know, have a low percentage chance of working. But Game 3, the final game of the series, is probably the other opportunity to do that. You know, everything's on the line. You have no second chances. If you really want to go out with a bang, pick that AP Shaco mid. Just make it happen. But, you know, if I'm these two teams, I'm probably playing more conservatively, sticking with something that I know works and playing it out to that. Wichita, though, quickly banning out that Zach, recognizing that the engage opportunity it brought to last game was a huge impact in what they wanted to do.
Yes, and I love that reactive ban for Wichita. I think they're trying to contain that jungle impact as much as they can. They saw that Zach had really nice engage opportunities across the entire rift. We saw a couple times where he gets those huge leaps from unexpected angles, or even making plays hiding in that bush in the bot river. So going for huge plays there, and the response from Lane Tech is then to ban out the Misfortune.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it on both sides of the rift. Both teams have had a chance to play it. It's been largely impactful in both of them. And being that low resource, high damage type of champion, it does make sense that if you want to play something else, then you don't want the other team to pick it. And I think Lane Tech Prep is making the correct mental decision. Getting that Ezreal once again, it was so big Game 1. Yes, you open yourself up for the potential counter pick now, but if Carvindo can continue playing as well as he has all series, you really don't have that much of a concern. And I do like the early game jungler pickup once again.
Yes, and you can see the Lee Sin coming out for Wichita. You talk about boom or bust picks, leaving it all on the line. Lee Sin is one of those champions, very mechanically intensive, difficult to play. If you want to leave it all out there, well, that is certainly a champion to do it on.
Yeah, I mean, he does offer a unique, opportunity in the series. He's not played a ton professionally right now because, once again, there is no current active professional league. But he is very feast or famine, like you were saying. He can, go for those big, flashy highlight plays, stealing the dragon, stealing the baron, the insect, the enemy AD carry into your squad. So, I mean, he can do these types of things, but he also falls off a cliff. There is a point in the game where he just becomes an ult bot, and when that is a concern, then that's why you don't pick him. But looking already at this lane tech squad, Ezreal, Zyra, both very squishy targets. Even with that Iceborne Gauntlet that we saw from Ezreal last game, he's still pretty squishy, and a full damage Lee Sin is able to kind of put down the work and make sure that he gets deleted from the game. But lane tech picking up a set, another big change to the game plan here.
Yes, and then the response from Wichita right in that top lane is to go straight to the Aurelia against the set. We can see, we didn't really touch on it too much in the bans there, but both the Ornn and the Malphite getting banned out, so including a bit more variance now into these lanes, and we can see the final pick for lane tech, the Orianna.
Orianna, once again, a very staple in the mid lane. Never been an opportunity to be bad. And when your opposing laner is Corki Orianna is the OG Corki Azir. Like, you will see Corki Azir spammed everywhere. But going back through the history of League of Legends, it's Corki Orianna is the true runback. And so now we're going to have to see how these two champions interact with the game around them, because all they're going to be doing is farming. They're going to clear their wave. Corki's going to go back to base at like 8-9 minutes, pick up the package, and probably go back and farm some more and not make anything happen with that first package. It'll be the second and third ones that really bust open the game or, lose it. And we're going to have to see how lane tech responds to the, equalizer but more damagey effect that Corki can bring to these dragon fights. And with, it's actually going to be Ezreal Zyra bottom, which is much different from what we've seen out of the bot lane from lane tech so far.
And I have to say, for both of these teams as well, these are very different champ pools that have been pulled out here for this Game 3. I'm looking across the board at Wichita. I don't think we've seen any of them play those champions yet in this series. So, definitely going a different route perhaps. And part of that being due to the bans, but also part of that, I think, being, okay, let's just throw everything we got. We're pulling every card that we have up our sleeve.
And this is really looking to be the most volatile game that we've had so far. The two games up until now have been very back and forth. Lane tech taking the advantages early on last game and making sure they work out, whereas Wichita had the early game lead game one. This time, though, you have Zyra, Orianna, Set, Jarvan, Ezreal, all very explosive style champions, going up against Nautilus, Lee Sin, Varus, Corki, Aurelia, who are all pretty sustained damage. And right now we've seen two unique build paths out of Varus. We've seen both the on-hit build where he goes Blade of the Ruin King into Ginsu's Rage Blade, and we've seen the once again, poke lethality style build from the champion where he goes Umbral Glaive, Duskin Blade into Yomu's Ghost Blade and things like that, and just spams those piercing arrows and doing tons of damage.
Yes, the other element I think as well that is interesting, we're talking a bit about the bot lane here as well, is that Nautilus may have a tough time against the Ezreal Zyra. It's not easy. Dredgeline is a very effective, pull, right? But against the Ezreal, he has that built-in mobility to his kit. Going to be tough to land some of those and see if they can get those early engagements that they want for Wichita.
Yeah, the game plan there is definitely drop the depth charge, have him arcane shift away from that, have the knockup land, and then dredgeline him. The worry there is that he, arcane shifts over a wall, behind a teammate, to the other side of a Jarvan Cataclysm, to a position where you can't dredgeline him, but that forces him out of the fight. That gives you 1 to 2 seconds of free reign in that lane where you're not, or in that engagement where you're potentially not getting mystic shotted, into oblivion. And so small advantages like that are what can really bring Nautilus to the forefront of the support pack, which is really why we've been seeing him so often, on top of the kind of quaint busted dredge line there with its giant lollipop of a target.
Yeah, so of all the skill shots to be using, dredge line is one of the most effective. As ladies and gentlemen, we're going to jump straight into it here. Game number 3 between Wichita Southeast and Lane Tech. This one for all the marbles. Away we go into the Rift, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, once again, no real cheeky business coming out from either squad. They are playing it super duper safe, making sure that everything possible can go their way. They don't want to throw it away at level 1, in this super impactful game 3.
Yes, nobody willing to overextend. And the other interesting part that we haven't seen yet, this is both junglers starting on the top side there, so bit of a little bit non-standard, but they are getting those leash from those top laners, so might throw off the timings a little bit early on here, game 3, but nevertheless, away we go.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that they decide to do it here in game 3. Both teams decide to do it. The response there from Jarvan is probably you start topside because you don't want to lose it to a 3-buff Lee Sin, who would be able to start his blue buff and then typically run over to the enemy red and take it, at which point you now are behind. We saw it last game with the Graves. It stands to reason that they would do it again here with the Lee Sin. However, they cleared it pretty quick.
Here.
Yeah, I mean, they cleared it pretty quick, which gives Jarvan, the advantage. We didn't see any type of vertical attempt from Lee Sin, probably because they saw that the set wasn't in lane already, so they knew that Jarvan had started topside.
Yes, and those are the small little indicators that you have to pay attention to in this game, just understanding the timing of when everyone's getting into the lane. You can reasonably surmise that when the top laner is late to his lane, it means that he's leashing for a jungler, as Oriana's going to have to back way out of that. Carvindle wanting nothing to do with the Lee Sin, especially early on.
Holds onto his flash, though, which is huge, especially when you get an early gank like that. Burning a flash as an immobile mid laner is almost guaranteed when you have a Lee Sin coming in. But now we see the counter engage.
Oh, and here we go. This is a pure 2v2 in the mid lane here, as Cages might get caught out by Lee Sin here. He has to back all the way to the tower. And that was a very extended trade, a deep 2v2, but nobody finding that initial first takedown.
Yeah, I mean, Jarvan not using any of his abilities, just kind of running up and auto-attacking. It's an interesting strat, Colin, but we'll see if it works out.
And it's possible he may not have been expecting the re-engagement there, perhaps thinking that Lee Sin had already pathed away from the mid lane, but you get these players lurking around, trying to find that avenue to succeed. It's been such a tight matchup the whole way through. You really do need those little tiny advantages are going to be huge.
And Matt, as we look now to once again this slower pace early game, we look to some of the runes coming out for the squad. It is that arcane comment on the Varus, which will lead into that lethality style build that I was talking about earlier. Everything else looking pretty standard across the board. No real surprise on any of the champions. Pretty much everybody running, that Conqueror keystone. It's too good. It's just too good.
And the other thing is, you don't want to try anything too adventurous here, right? You're going to tend to want to play a bit more safe in Game 3. Even for Ezreal, no grasp of the Undying there. You're trying to avoid, doing anything too over the top.
And a pretty decent CS advantage starting to crop up down here in the bottom lane. Before the wave crashed, it was at about 15 CS. Not able to pick up all the wave crashing there either, unfortunately. So it is just going to look like it continues up a little bit.
Yes, establishing that priority is such a key element here. we haven't seen too many gank attempts, actually, other than the mid lane there. I'm wondering who will be the first one to call out for that push, whether it's, in the bot side or the top side, mid lane, all of the choices available. Who can make the first impact play?
I think it's gonna have to be that mid lane. We see the reluctance for the Wichita bottom lane to try and push hyper aggressively. That Jarvan always able to kind of sneak up in a surprisey spot. But I mean, the mid lane though always going to be pushed, always one way or the other, and so it is giving the junglers ample opportunity to try and make a play.
Yeah, so you can see Wichita, they're clearing out vision around the dragon. They're just going to go for it here with Lee Sin and Nautilus pushed up. Orianna not rotating over, so this Drake in all likelihood just going to fall the way of Wichita. Lee Sin still on it as their bot lane has rotated back in.
Yeah, and a very early Ocean Drake is pretty impactful. We've talked about the 2.5% health regen, but early in the game is so much more meaningful because you're so much less tanky, so much less sustained. Nobody's built Vamp Scepters or anything yet, so it's pretty impactful being able to just get free sustain.
Yes, that nice little 2.5% is very key early, as we mentioned, but then it's one of those things as well. Okay, what's the soul going to be then? I'll ask you this, Doctor. What do you think would be advantageous for either team in terms of souls? Do you think the Cloud Soul would be the most advantageous?
No, I think the Infernal Soul for Wichita would be very similar to their Game 1 strat, where they have the very high poke, it explodes every time you land an ability, it just synergizes super effectively, whereas I think for lane tech, the Earth Soul would be probably one of the best. It gives you that, bonus shield that lets you be, marginally more tanky, and it lets you take, longer engages only to be able to reset and get that shield once again. And with those being our two options today, with the Cloud Soul being up next, it really could be anybody's game.
It has seemingly been a coin flip so far, but you'll notice right away with the pace of this game too, we're 8 minutes in and there haven't really been too many direct engagements, no takedowns. We talk a lot about it, but it really is the effect of that Game 3 where nobody's really willing to make the first mistake. Nobody wants to be the reason why their school is not crowned champion here, as we see Ezreal trying to go big there in the bot lane, but doesn't quite land that ultimate.
Yeah, definitely trying to get the wave clear. Has completed the Tear of the Goddess and the pickaxe there. Pretty short downtime before I was able to upgrade it. It's 650 gold once you have the two components. So you could potentially be looking to shove that wave to get the opportunity to go back. But the Varus Nautilus wave clear is absurd. Using that Riptide and the Piercing Arrow, comboed out with the Relic Shields, there's never going to be a minion wave that Varus and Nautilus can't push through.
And it will help them establish priority in the bot lane, but Orianna is going to try and catch out Corgi here. She gets enough done. Individual pure 1v1 coming out from Carvindle here. He will earn his team the first takedown.
Yeah, pretty solid stuff there from Carvindle. Using the command protect there at the very early onset of the engagement, making sure that not going to lose, the burst battle. And then because of the Valkyrie in from Humph, he had no escape. He would have had to try and flash away. But he definitely seemed like he believed he had a chance there.
As we see the Lee Sin flashing back in, it will take down Carvindle. Luca-licious on the impact play from Lee Sin. We spoke about it earlier. If you want to go boom or bust, that's your champ, and that's a big boom right there.
Yeah, being able to take away the advantage that the Orianna had tried to gain for herself very early on, now going to lose out on the minion farm, no longer in position to try and fight for the Herald that Cages put so much work into trying to secure only for it to have it stolen away. Really tough there to see Orianna overstay her welcome so hard.
Yes, and you had to perhaps anticipate that was coming. And give Carvindle credit, he nearly escaped on his own, but the re-aggression from Lee Sin, that flashback in, the timing was just so pure, just able to secure that takedown. And that's the answer you really needed, right? When you have, you know, an impact player like Carvindle, we saw how good he was on the Ezreal in the previous game, making sure to try and shut that down as early as you can.
And it's kind of smart that they picked the Ezreal first rotation because, like I thought, why wouldn't you give it to Carvindle, who was so strong on it last game? Oh no.
Oh, this could be problematic here, but Set will just go straight after Lee Sin, trying to use that ultimate and that body slam to get out of the way. Will he do it? He has to burn the flash. Ultimately, he will narrowly escape with his life there on that gank.
Yeah, the Showstopper, such a useful tool to try and dodge ganks at this stage of the game. The Dragon Kick from Lee Sin wasn't available just yet. It came off cooldown right after the flash, actually. And then, you know, it's tough to kill a Set. He's pretty strong as a champion.
Yes, those brews are so difficult to deal with. You saw Skeeblins there on Aurelia just trying to inflict the most amount of damage with that ganking coming, but here we go. We're going to transition over to the bot lane here, as this might be a fight for this Drake as, oh my goodness, this is going to be going in from Timely. Everyone seems to follow it up. Huge impact play right there. His rest is going to sling cages. Nautilus going in and will slow down Orianna, but it's not quite enough. There's no follow-up. Ezreal now. Soldier's going to get that takedown on the Timely, and finally the flash away will end that one. Bit of chaos there, but Lane Tech, they do pick that up.
Yeah,
the 2-for-2 trade over that Drake.
Yeah, the 1-for-1 trade there, and the Dragon, very impactful there for Lane Tech. They do get the Cloud Drake, which does give them that reduced cooldown on their ultimates. And when you have Orianna, Zyra, that's a great thing to have. But overall, they do get another takedown on to their 80 carry Ezreal once again. And it's pretty stellar that they have two Ezreal players in one team.
Well, it gives you so many choices in the draft, right? Okay, you give Ezreal the priority pick, but then he can obviously play in both the bot lane and the mid lane with two different individuals on that team capable of playing it. So nice there for Lane Tech to have that flexibility. And you can see, obviously, very impactful in both roles regardless.
Yeah, we'll have to see how he continues to scale. Definitely going to be going the Trinity Force build this game. I can't be wrong twice in a row, but it's now in the bottom lane. It just makes more sense to be going the Trinity Force style build. But, I mean, this mid lane's starting to be a problem for Wichita. You know, Carvindle's just so far ahead at every step of the way so far. And, you know, being that much more impactful with the hard CC option, you know, as the Orianna versus Corki matchup, is just more useful for the team.
And here we see that Lee Sin was camping that top lane, but a Self wisely will just, again, Set so difficult to deal with, will just simply get right out of the way of that. But he will have to defend against the Herald now, too.
Big tower damage there, but nothing else really there. They missed the tower plates by 5 seconds. So that's kind of hurtful. You steal away the Herald, you want to use it to get those bonus gold on the plates, and you miss it by 5 seconds. That's unfortunate.
It is a little bit unlucky, as they would have preferred the extra gold from the tower plates. And you can see Humph there taking, you know, that camera over in the mid lane. Simply has to recall, does not have the HP to withstand that onslaught from the Orianna.
And this is Corki Orianna. You've seen it before, we'll see it again. These two champions are always going to be prevalent in League of Legends. Cages getting us back interrupted here. This isn't good for him. He's going to be going down.
Yeah, Luca Licious doing a huge job there with the ward hop, and he's going to try and regress onto the Ezreal. He's getting that 1v1. Ezreal has to flash out of the way, and Garfield's now caught all alone, but uses the huge play there to try to get out of the jungle. Is it enough, though? No, Dresso will still pick it up. That was almost 3 million IQ, but just not quite enough. Do it again as Lee Sin back over the wall, trying to go in, trying to clean up, but Carvindle will still take down the Aurelia. Here we go again.
Oh,
under
no!
the tower. What is going on here? Shutdowns left, right, and center. Oh my goodness.
A big
was
display there
craziness.
of the Lee syndrome. You land Q, you follow the Q. That was almost super huge for Soldier being able to arcane shift out there. If he had survived, it would have been absolutely insane to punish that Lee Sin. Trading 1-for-1 though in that type of situation, definitely going to call Worth on that. I am curious about how Set is so far behind right now. Is ahead in CS, but just now completing his Blade of the Ruin King. It's curious.
It's not something we've been too tuned into in this matchup so far, as we've seen a lot of the action working the way of the middle and the bot lane. But definitely something to keep an eye out, as he's just now getting back to that lane against the Aurelia, where, you know, you have two major impact champions here, as well. Asselth is just going to try and push that wave all for himself there.
Yeah, we've now reached the stage of the game where Set is pseudo online. He's just going to be doing so much damage to the Aurelia right now, who does not have any armor to try and combat him. So any trades, as long as that stun doesn't connect, Asset's going to just walk away from in the victory lead. This is not good for Carvindell.
No, it is certainly not. It is just going to be a pure 3v1. Timely, wisely leaving that one for the Corki. And an interesting spot there as well. You know, you have three champions there against one. Who do you leave that shutdown or that takedown goal to?
Definitely the Corki. He's had a rough game so far. He definitely needs that to get back involved in the game. And, you know, they make the smart decision there to do that. And unfortunately, the poor timing on Carvindell means that they do get the first Earth Drake of the game on Wichita and can start stacking again towards that soul point.
Yes, these little tiny plays, you may think one pick doesn't have too much of an impact, but it can certainly play out through the rest of the game. We saw there, of course, opening up the opportunity is Timely. Will actually pick up the trade there onto the Zyra, and Lukalicious still trying to go in on the Soldier, who will use that mobility to just get back under his tower. An assault in the bottom lane here for Wichita, as we look straight back into the top lane. Asselth picks up a huge chunk of damage onto Skibin's Jarvan in the area, but not able to convert.
Yeah, and this is why we're seeing this lethality Varus come back into play. You saw that piercing arrow chunk so much damage out of the Zyra. Really tough to win a fight when you just chunked right off the bat. You know, timing it with that dredge line, though, so big, because it's such... We've talked about it so much already, about how huge of a hitbox that has, and because it is such a hard CC, it really does set you up for the perfect opportunity to land that piercing arrow. And, you know, one of the few times we see it miss, he is going to trade his life for this tower, almost undoubtedly.
Asselth had pushed up. Oh, but Cage just comes back in over the top, and it's going to be a re-aggression now. Set trying to clean this up, trying to finish this fight, but Lukalicious is here as well, and Dressel is ultimately going to secure that takedown there. That is a huge pick for Wichita. What was initially a 2v1 became a 2v2, then a 2v3, and Lukalicious still trying to go after Asselth.
Yeah, so much cooldown reduction already stacked up onto this Lee Sin. Being able to constantly spam out those, you know, Qs just to make sure that the pressure is always being applied. So much damage backing it as well. You know, the champion does have some really high base stats, and so, you know, it's something that you always need to keep aware of, especially when he has the execute damage backing it up.
Yes, and you can see slowly now, Wichita, they've been getting the picks to go their way. They're asserting control of objectives. They're switching their lanes up, trying to push everything in. Seem to be in the driver's seat for now, but we know how quickly that can change.
Yeah, and we're starting to see some scaling items come out in favor of lane tech. We already saw the Blade of the King in top side. We're now seeing the Iceborne Gauntlet in the bottom side. Zyra very close to her Leandry's Torment as well. And so I am curious about the Iceborne Gauntlet pick from Soldier. I definitely think the Trinity Force would have given his team a bit more of an edge, but he must be thinking that he doesn't need to be a primary damage source when he has Orianna and Set in the front line.
That is an interesting point to make. It is, of course, the difference, right, when you have two different players individually working on that Ezreal. You can see, some different runes, perhaps some different style choices. There are different ways to play the champion, certainly, so perhaps some of that own individual comfort coming into play there.
As we are now heading solidly into the mid game, it is kind of looking like we're going to have another long one on our hands. Definitely with the Soul going to be taken down eventually. Soul Point available in a minute. Looking to get the pick on Carvindle again as well.
Oh, but Carvindle is going to go gold there, but there's health arriving here as the Self and Pages will come in and try and re-aggress. Oh, Garfield nearly gets away on Zyra, but they're still pressing the fight in the mid lane here. Oh, but a huge Dreadlight coming in from Timely will try and slow down Cages. And now all 5 members here for Wichita, they're just trying to take down the Set. He's so tanky eventually. Pump finally gets it. Soldier trades out on Timely. It's a 1-for-1 and finally we back off. Huge team fight there, but no clear advantage still.
Yeah, with everybody so low on the lane tech side, it does open up the possibility for the Varus to be able to execute anybody in range. And with Lee Sin surviving, it means that he is potentially going to get the dragon. Looking again to get a pick, though, instead of going for that objective. Fancy feet coming in from Carvindle, though. Very taken low as Hump. But again, that dragon's still alive.
That was such an underrated piece of play there from Carvindle. That sidestep was so huge in that 2v1 spot. You just never want to get caught out there. As Lane Tech working to establish some control now. This next fight seemingly going to take place over the Drake. We have tons of priority given to that bot side of the map, trying to establish vision, trying to establish presence in the Ripper.
And with the Rift Herald going mid lane, it tried to open up a decision from Wichita.
As we can see here, Lane Tech has pulled it out, but Lee Sin will go in. It doesn't matter. Set has ultimately taken the dragon. And as Self will take down Luca-licious for the ambitious play there. Lane Tech, they're able to deny Soul Point.
Yeah, I mean, they set it up for themselves in another 5 minutes again. But, things are back to where they were, a minute and a half ago, as these teams are still farming up, still trying to get to their big ticket items. And, scaling-wise, I do still have to give it over to Lane Tech. Set is a stat check champion. If he hits a certain point, he just wins the game. And we're already starting to see glimmers of that in these, smaller skirmishes when he's able to get the full extent of his Haymaker off. Doesn't even need it that time.
There. Ultimately, 3 players coming over for the check on to Skeeblins there in the Aurelia, and that will be a no-go for him. Trying to just secure any amount of gold CS that you can by picking up the Scuttle Crab, but perhaps not worth losing your life over.
Sometimes the 120 gold makes a difference, but now, Aselth is finally given some agency in the game. We've seen them so far on the Jax in Game 1 that had a tough time with the Malphite, and then the Ornn in Game 2 that had a hard time with the Malphite. Now, finally, here in Game 3, the Malphite's banned away, and wow, Aselth gets to play League of Legends.
Well, in fairness, I would say I think Aselth actually had a fair amount of impact on Ornn using those ultimates towards the later stages of the game, but I agree. You can definitely see, the difference between the champions here as Set. When he really comes online, he's not only is he so tanky, but then he also outputs so much damage as well. He's very balanced in that sense as a frontline champion, and he is dangerous when he gets fed.
I don't know if balanced is the word I personally would use, but he does get to do some fun stuff with both, the showstopper and the haymaker there. That middle line doing full true damage. And so, as these later team fights happen and, that true damage starts stacking up, he'll be able to start cutting through these frontliners that Wichita is trying to bring to the table in the form of the Aurelia and the Nautilus.
That will very much be the case as we are just past the 26-minute mark. Still very even, still very clear across both sides as Cages will wisely get out of the jungle. They're just trying to establish some vision, doesn't want anything to do with that enemy jungle there.
We're going back to the good old ARAM style gameplay here as we wait for the next dragon to come online. Pretty much the standard we've seen all series is these teams are very focused on getting this soul buff before trying to worry about, ending the game. And, right now they have plenty of wave clear on both sides, that potentially is the only way to end the game, unless stuff like this happens and Zyra gets blown up.
Well, she won't quite suffer any impact there. Lucalicious not too keen on going in just yet. He will try and clear out that vision, and he will now take the jump over to Garfield, and in the pure 1v1 you have to clear to the Lee Sin, but Garfield will flash away. Lucalicious flashing and dashing over the wall will end up with the pick, but he's going to run into some problems now. Self rotating through his set. He's hungry, and he's going to flash in and take that one. Actually, Soldier, will end up with the final touch on that.
That's a lot of summoner spells being blown, however. If we're looking at what we see here, it's Flash Ignite from Garfield, Flash from himself, and Flash from Lucalicious. And with the dragon now spawning in 30 seconds, Lucalicious is going to be able to just barely get there in time if they do decide to start it at spawn.
We'll have to see, of course, how the rotations play out there, as this has been very evenly contested throughout the entire map, no one with a true clear advantage. But now you can see the rotations moving through the bot side.
I do like the decision from Cages here to be a tank. He recognizes that Set's not going to be the main, item tank, getting, those rando ins and frozen hearts and things like that. And so it falls onto Cages to be the one to do it. And so he makes the smart decision going for the Cinder Hulk jungle item.
And here we go. Here's the big play. The engagement now coming on by this Drake. It will ultimately be Lee Sin who secures it. But what follows up in this team fight? We have all sorts of action going left, right, and center. Skeeblin picks up one on Garfield. Going gold is a Self who will just maybe get away. He'll turn it around, and Soldier will clean that up. Timely and Dressel just trying to get away, but a Self will not let them escape. But here comes the re-aggression from Skeeblin, just trying to take down one, and it's no good. Lane Tech. They may have lost the dragon, but they do not lose the fight.
Really scattered team fight there. Lots of engage and re-engage there. We saw Carvindal actually miss his ultimate with the shockwaves there, trying to get it onto the Corki, but kind of sombreroed it. But they're still able to win the team fight afterwards thanks to the great positioning from both Self and Soldier. Carvindal being able to stay alive, very impactful as well, continuing to be able to use that command protect to make sure that shields are on all the vulnerable targets. And you can say Cage is actually alive because of it. And right now it does seem that they're going to secure the Baron with the help of their jungler. And now Drezzo almost caught out. And yeah, they're just going to use the shockwave. It's probably on like a 57-second cooldown right now. Has, I believe, 30 CDR in the kit in the item build path. Maybe another 10% in the runes. Plus the Cloud Drake on top of it. Yeah, you can spend that whenever you want.
Yes, it will be, of course, Orianna trying to go huge. She is 4-2-8. And she also has a just about 65 CS lead over that Corki. So obviously, individually, in the 1v1 in that sense, in that matchup, doing well, but trying to generate impact for her team as well.
And that's what we've seen from Carvindle all series long, is being that big impact player. This game, looking to put the whole squad on his back as he looks to secure the W. A Stealth kind of in what could be an awkward position. 3 enemy members on the bottom side of the map here, but he's playing smart, making sure that he's not being too aggressive on this split push, waiting for the rest of his team to get in a position to either trade, map pressure or to draw pressure away from him.
And you can see the effect of that Baron buff from Lane Tech here. They've already taken down 1 tower, and they're just trying to push in as many waves across the board as you can. You can see that wave topside pushing in. Set obviously working in the bot lane here. You can see that work going on and trying to get all they can out of this Baron. Oh, we're gonna go big engagement now coming in. Soldier is absolutely on fire, and Timely is just going to try to use the dredge line to get away. Will it be enough? No. Soldier chunks him down. Cages cleans it up. The tower falls, and all of a sudden it's Lane Tech in a dangerous position here.
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens when you let a team scale. Lane Tech on that Ezreal, on that Orianna, on the Zyra, able to get their item breakpoints, and with his stealth and cages being so tanky in that front line, yes, the Varus is putting out tons of damage onto Zyra, but he's really the only one.
This can be problematic. Lane Tech is pushed very far into the base, but they will decide to back out at this point. Wise for them, they have all 5 members up. They don't want to overstay their welcome.
Yeah, not with the Soul Dragon spawning in about a minute 10. They have to claim this dragon, or else it is going to be Wichita that does get the Earth Soul, which is going to be a big component to what could be the end of the game.
We are starting to approach that point. 32 minutes in. These objectives have so much impact throughout the game. We're talking about souls. We're talking about barons that really augment each team's ability to try and just push for that nexus. So clearly the objective is given utmost priority. You can see Timely here on Nautilus just trying to remove that vision and begin to establish position on the Drake.
Yeah, I mean, they do only get the ward in the back of the pit here. It's going to be pretty clearable if you're Lane Tech right now. They do have 1-2 people with control wards available. The support and the jungler, tail as old as time, they're going to be the warders. And Lucalicious trying to be cheeky about it and, potentially get a pick here. But he can't even defend the enemy control ward in his own jungle.
Luke actually doing a pretty good job to stay alive there, understanding that it's probably not just the Jarvan sneaking around in the jungle. You can see both top laners working against each other there, but already Lane Tech has pulled out the dragon, and they're going to take it. Lucalicious tried to go in, but it's not quite enough. That was airtight.
I honestly thought that they were going to end up giving away the Dragon Soul because Jarvan was over in the bush by red side, but at the last second he gets that EQ combo over the wall and secures it for his team, and he's not done yet.
Oh, it's a big flash play past the turret there, and the ultimate engagement Timely just trying to stay alive on Nautilus, and now we cut over the top side as well. That turret will fall. A Stealth picks up 1 in that top lane fight. And it's Lane Tech. They're in a position to try and end this game.
Yeah, I mean, gonna be going for the 2nd and 3rd inhibitors now, potentially pushing on through for the victory. It is going to be interesting what their gameplay decision here is.
Well, Lane Tech, they do have the advantage, but Lucalicious will try and push that set away. This could be a problem. Hump is here to try and help him out. But a flashback in will force Lucalicious to go golden. And he's going to try and get away, but Set, he's just so big. He doesn't stop. He'll push through. And himself is unstoppable as he pushes by 1. Ultimately, he will fall. It is another turret, though, for Lane Tech. And they're trying to make plays to end the game.
Yeah, and that is the power of the new Death Stance. Being able to have that much armor, magic resistance, and lifesteal all in one item does let you go for these kind of silly plays, like, diving the enemy inhibitor turret. It ends up working out still in favor of Lane Tech because they get the middle inhibitor and that top inhibitor turret. Baron is now alive, and so we see Lucalicious clearing out some of the vision around it, trying to get the Scuttlecrab too, so they do have that semi-permanent ward available to them. But man, it is going to be so tough for them to try and win a fight here when everybody is so far behind across the board.
Yes, and this is the point of the game where you can see the impact of the gold deficit. You look at the top of the screen there, roughly a 7,000 gold difference across the teams. And when you're starting to get into builds, past 3 items at this point in the game, that has a big impact. That extra bit of damage or lifesteal or what have you, whatever it may be, can really turn the tide of a fight.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at the rest of the build paths that we're seeing with this gold advantage, Ezreal on 2 lifesteal items, Set on 2 lifesteal items, Jarvan with the Guardian Angel, on a full tank build, that is such a, luxury purchase. But, oh no.
But here we go. It will be Wichita to try and contest it. They'll go right back in. Oh, but Skibblins is actually going to pick up one. He will ultimately be dropped by himself as now the re-aggression comes back out. It will be cages on Jarvan finding that pick. And Carvindel's not done either. He'll flash over the wall and find a third here for Lane Tech. They deny Wichita any chance at that Baron. Dresso and Timely pushed all the way back to their next.
Yeah, and it looks like the call is to, at the very least, take the inhibitors, if not the game. 20 seconds on Skibblins, only Drezo and Timely to try and defend the base against this super powered squad. And with that, Nexus Tower going down, that should just about do it.
And ladies and gentlemen, Game 3 has concluded. It will be Lane Tech who will be your Central Region champions. Congratulations to them. It was a hard-fought battle on the Rift, but they do manage to pull it out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, that game 1 so long ago seemed really in favor of the Wichita squad, but through the series, we saw Lane Tech just come online. They downloaded their opponents, and they were able to push through all of their advantage to make sure that they got the most out of them. And we saw, 2 different Ezreal picks coming through there in the 2-0 reverse sweep. And both players just playing it exquisitely, similar build paths throughout the whole game, and being able to be that, soft engage, I want to say, being able to land those Iceborne Gauntlet slow fields really seemed to kind of turn the fights away. Wichita didn't have the same mobility within a team fight that they may have liked.
I think another turning point in this series that I want to bring up as well is I want to give a particular shout out, I think, to Self, who really turned his game around. He really had a full swing from Game 1 to Game 2 to Game 3. He really showed what he was capable in the end on that set. Tremendous impact throughout that Game 3. I think he individually really turned it around for his team and helped them take down this title.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it mid-game there. Game 1 having to deal with the Malphite. Game 2 having to deal with the Malphite. Game 3, he finally gets a more favorable matchup. Not that Orin Malphite's unfavorable, but Set Aurelia is just so set favored at every single stage of the game that it really makes sense to reward him for surviving those first 2 games against the Malphite.
Yes, it's so difficult, right? Especially when you go down Game 1 in a series, right? You're in the grand final, you're trying to win the title, and this Lane Tech squad, even though they dropped Game 1, they kept their composure, they stayed right in it, and they actually ended up pulling off a reverse sweep in the end. So I give them so much credit for just having that ability to push Game 1 aside and win 3 very close games. Or, excuse me, win 2 very close games.
Yeah, I mean, they played in 3 very close games, obviously coming out ahead in the lighter 2. But I mean, the two compositions that they won with as well, very varied. You know, between game 2 and game 3, we saw a lot of changes. The Zach was banned away. Zach was, you know, picked in game 2. Set being picked up eventually. 2 different Ezreals. Just lots of variety there shown by the players in not only their gameplay styles but their champion picks. And sometimes when, you know, we see certain levels of League of Legends, champion pick variety can be very small. You know, we see a lot in professional play that, you know, we talk about champion pools and champion oceans, and that's why we see players like Caps and Perks do so well, because they can just play literally any champion you hand them. And then there are some other champions, like maybe like the Odd One, who is like a Maokai one trick and potentially don't have that same versatility that they can bring to a team. And so, you know, being able to have these types of opportunities to, you know, let your shot caller take, you know, bit more pressure off of themselves and let them, you know, make different game plans that aren't so tunnel visions. You know, not everybody has to be, you know, season 7 TSM.
Very difficult to replicate, you know, this style of gameplay at a professional level, and it looks like we are going to get one of our players who was just in that match in an interview here in a second. We're getting Soldier online, so we'll get a bit of insight perhaps into some of that Ezreal play. So we will actually head on over into that. Sam, how are you doing? Hold on, we can't quite hear you, Sam. We're just trying to make sure you're patched in so we can get your thoughts on this game here.
Is this working better? Or
there you go. Now
All
we
right.
got you, buddy.
Whew.
Congratulations. How was it?
Thank you. It was really stressful, but we pulled through. That first game got me like shaken, you know, but we did it.
So what is the communication in the team like? You know, like you said, game 1 made it a little bit more stressful than maybe you wanted to like, but what are the comms like when you're trying to, you know, recoup from that?
Yeah, so I thought we were going to be like really quiet and like start to like kind of fall off a little bit, but everybody just kind of like picked each other up, and we started to just like kind of carry each other through that game and just communicate and make jokes and just kind of get each other through. And, you know, I really needed that, and my team pulled through for me.
Definitely. You can see, of course, the huge turnaround you guys had. I want to actually touch on that game too, because I think that was a pretty big game for you individually, working in that bot lane there. You know, tell me what changed in between games 1 and 2 that allows you to have that kind of impact.
Yeah, so I just said that I kind of ran down in game 1 and that I really needed to play better for my team, because these people really they really care about each other, and I needed to show up for them. So I just kind of put that in my head, maybe made some coffee, and then that was enough.
Hey, sometimes that little extra boost is all you need.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Got my local coffee brand right here.
Oh, local even. Wow, that's pretty cool. So talk about like the program a little bit, you know, being able to take part in this play versus thing. You know, we talked about it on broadcast, how this wasn't really a thing when we were, you know, your age. You know, what does it mean to you to have this opportunity?
Yeah, so it's really cool just to be able to connect with people from my school over something that we all love, which is League of Legends and video games. And it's just great to see like a whole community kind of like rile around over esports and have it be like a talked about thing at our school. And I think it's really awesome that we're able to like have an impact here. So in the future, like this is taken more seriously in our school and in like internationally and in our school.
Definitely, that's one of the things we strive for here, is to have, you know, that greater sense of community, right? You touched on it a little bit, because this is something that, you know, can really bring us all together. And I'm just so happy that you guys are, you know, working together with your classmates. Can you tell me a little bit about your teammates? Like, do you guys practice together, like at school, or is it more online? Obviously, with the world situation, you're not in school currently, but...
Yeah, so when PlayVS was taking place before the quarantine and before all like the Corona stuff hit, we would always come together to one of our classrooms and play on like these certain like Chromebooks that we had. The school like lent them to us so we could actually play like League. And then some people brought in their own equipment, like mouses and computers and keyboards, and we would just be able to all hang out like by a table and play our games. And it was a really cool experience for us.
Yeah, it's great to see the school stepping in and, you know, giving you guys, you know, not necessarily the opportunity, but also the tools to, you know, work within, you know, that opportunity. Do you have any final words for your teammates or anybody else who may have been watching for you today?
I mean, just thank you for all of the support you guys gave us. I know some of our teammates were laughing over some of the chat in between games and some of the spams, and that kind of gave us motivation to, not be so depressed about the game and just have some fun with it. And then to my teammates, you guys are honestly the best people I've ever played with. You guys communicate well. I thought people, get a bunch of high elo, diamond players in, and we're just gonna start flaming each other and beat our throats after 2 months. But we always kind of bring each other up, and we always communicate strongly, and we make a mistake, and we're like, okay, that's my bad. Here's what I do better next time. And there's never flame. It just feels so comfortable, and I'm at home, which I am.
Nice. We appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us on the broadcast here, Sam. Once again, congrats, and good luck in the future. Hopefully there is ever more success for you here in League of Legends.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you. And yeah, that was the lane tech 80 carry soldier you just heard from, who had a huge impact across the game. And I just love to hear the individual stories, right? Because at the end of the day, that's really what it's about here, right? Is bring people together to have fun in a good environment and try to shoot for the stars.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it all play out on the field here today. 2 teams of high caliber League of Legends putting everything on the line to try and bring home that state championship for their school.
Yes, and it will be once again, congratulations to Lane Tech, and commiseration to Wichita. I want to give them a quick shout out before we go as well, because I think they played their absolute hearts out in this series. We all saw how well they played as a group, and they deserve a huge amount of credit as well. It's not easy to get to this point, and it's not easy to win.
Yeah, and so that's going to do it for us here tonight. Shout out to PlayVS for not only giving the players the opportunity, but us on the broadcast as well. It has been an absolute joy, once again, as always, Matt, to join you here on the desk. But that is, like I said, going to do it for us here today. Be sure to stay tuned to all of the socials you see on your screen as we head into more League of Legends action coming up at some point soon, and you definitely want to be on the pulse for that. And with that, we bid you adieu. Say goodbye, Matt.
Have a wonderful rest of your evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We will catch you on the next broadcast. Take care, everyone.